Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person, and we hope to be conducting a conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance. However, councillors and members of the public may join meetings remotely. Currently, we are experiencing some technical difficulties, so those who have called in, we can hear you speak, but you may be having some challenges hearing the council meeting. You are welcome to join us in council chambers, and a recording should be available following the meeting. If you have submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this meeting is being recorded and may be uploaded to our website and our social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. We also ask that all attendees mute their devices to reduce disruptions to the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We do have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
What? I'd like to add one under confidential, Councillor Code of Conduct.
Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Yes, I'd like to add to my Deputy Reeves report, SEWA briefing update and possible letter of support.
We'll add that under 3.2.
Madam Reeve and Council, Matt from Administration. A couple of supplemental items were circulated to Council on Friday, December the 2nd and Monday, December the 5th. The unapproved 2023 interim capital and operating budget update. There was supplemental budget information was sent to Council on Friday, December the 2nd, as well as Monday, December the 5th. There is a Village's demand letter response under FOIP Act Section 27, privileged information to add to closed session, as well as a letter of support for the Center of Excellence in Rural Healthcare Service Delivery for Drumheller. We'll add that under 3.1.2, and everything else I do believe is captured. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other additions or changes to the agenda? A motion to approve is amended.
So moved.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 1.31, minutes from our November 22nd regular council meeting. Does anyone see any errors or omissions?
I'll move minutes as presented.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.11, second and third reading for bylaw 2021-16.
Good morning, Council. Brad Bullock presenting from Administration. So this is bylaw one, first reading of the bylaw for this was completed, apologies, in June 2021, with the public hearing was held in August 2021. And then since then, we've just been, administration's been waiting for response on land titles for approval of this bylaw. So a road closure done in 1989 by the provincial government of an undeveloped road allowance in the area missed a small triangular area of 0.015 acres. So land titles did pick this up, and the county administration has been working with them to take care of this matter. It has, as I mentioned, received first reading in June 2021 with public hearing in August 2021. We've received approval from land titles for the road closure, and now the recommendation from administration is for second and third reading approvals from council. That's my report, and I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move resolution 1.
Deputy Reeve Clausen. You'll move the first recommendation. Any questions or discussion?
I can read it if council so chooses.
It's included in the package. Does anybody wish to have it read? I think we're good.
Well, I was just thinking it might be helpful for the people online. Oops. Might be helpful for the people online. I don't know. If they have it available, then we don't need to read it, but.
Yeah, it is available to the public
Okay,
in the
good enough.
council package.
Yep.
Available for download online. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Council's wishes?
I'll move resolution number 2.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.31. Unapproved 2023 interim capital and operating budget update.
I'll just kick it off, Madam Reeve and Council. Matt from administration here. Our manager of finance will be presenting the bulk of the report that you did receive. Of note, council did receive supplemental information with respect to questions that council did submit for answering from administration. So you would have all received that as well. Just another further note, this item may take a bit of time, and we do have a 9:30 just for the Reeves' attention on that matter. So with respect to where we are today, obviously what council has done is an extensive budget process, obviously working closely with administration, going back and forth, talking about both the operating and capital budgets, really gauging where council was at with respect to the approval of obviously the interim budget, which happens in December. Administration has done was present to council the answers to questions that council had after our committee of the whole meeting when we talked about the budget, and we provided council the time to comb through it, ask those questions. So those answers are presented to council today. Administration has also provided various scenarios in the report in the agenda package for council's consideration, taking into account status quo, what it would look like in terms of an interim budget at status quo, all the projects submitted, as well as kind of refining that, looking at critical projects in capital moving forward, and also looking at critical and high priority projects. If council does recall, administration provided that scale for council's consideration of that long-term capital plan and what was critical, what was high, what was medium, what was low, as well as all the justifications for the projects. So I'll turn it over to Joel, Manager of Finance, to present those scenarios and walk through kind of more in depth the process where we are today and where we want to go. And just to conclude, one of the hopes from administration coming from today is we get a better sense of where council's at with respect to the scenarios, because ultimately administration would prefer to present an ideal interim project at the December 20th council meeting for council's approval for that interim moving forward. Of course, council's aware that you do have the option to call a special meeting of council should there be more flavor and appetite to have that further discussion. But that's administration's hope today over the course of the next couple hours or so. So I'll turn it over to you, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Morning, Council. Joel from administration here to present some more budget background information. And just to summarize and what Matt was referring to in the report, we'll kind of go back to the scenarios that have been proposed, the high-level scenarios within the report. I'll just kind of summarize the content and the attachments just to walk through with you. So there was a few different intents with the report, one of them being a response to some of the council inquiries that we received, and we attached the ones that we had received in the report itself here on the first attachment. And then, as has been referred to, there was a supplemental package that was more comprehensive and additional questions there was about 6 or 7 pages that was distributed after that as well. So that was one of the main reasons for this report. The other being just a summarization, as you can see in this attachment, that was relatively similar to, I believe, the December 6th presentation that just showed kind of the starting point, which would have been this large package that you received that was kind of the comprehensive, all-encompassing, all the projects that are proposed. And so this is a summarization or a reconciliation of the changes from that point, from that document, showing all of the additions or the subtractions. And then we come to, sorry, I'll just zoom in here on the screen so everyone can see it if they're watching that. Yeah, so the $25.5 million starting point, and then we have the reconciliation of the table above of all the changes to come to the $25.3 million total. And then the similar kind of layout that we've shown in prior presentations of summarizing it by priority and by the type of project, just kind of a restatement of that with the new changes included. The other attachment that was included was just an update of this summary by project, which again was also included as a page within this document that you received initially. And this one is just to account for all of those changes that were received from the prior attachment that we just went through. So I did just want to go through these summaries, scenarios initially here. I will go back to the report. So when we were discussing among staff here, we just wanted to put forward a few scenarios that were we felt like could be some good decision points, and that can obviously be amended past that. So as Matt mentioned, there's the status quo, which is scenario 1, and that would be kind of approving the package as it stands, which would be all the critical high and medium projects, everything included in the summary. Scenario 2 would be to approve only the critical classified projects and the carry forward items. And so that would bring us to around 17.7 million in terms of the total approved budget value. One of the concerns when we were discussing this was that some of the high classified items are preliminary engineering and planning for future projects in future years. So by taking this approach, it may impact the planning in future years and adjusting those. So that was a concern with that approach. Scenario 3 would be to approve the critical, the high, and the carry forward projects. So basically we would just remove the medium projects, and that would give us about a $23.3 million total budget ask. And then this scenario 4 was essentially the same as the scenario 2, which would be approve all the critical and the high, except for there was 2 paving projects that are shovel ready and work out to about $4 million that staff said that would be deferrable without any or a low risk of any rework or anything like that. We'd be just deferring the projects, and staff also noted that this was 19.2 million, which was around the total that Brian from administration had noted in the prior council meeting. And so that was kind of at this point the one that we were bringing forward to just propose as going forward with, of course, with any adjustments that council would want. There was an additional attachment that I did want to note that I believe Shanna has already handed out to you. So this was, it was a critical item. So we just wanted to ensure that you had the project page for this. It's something that came up subsequent to the fact in regards to the Speargrass lift station pumps. Bryce from administration is also here if you have any questions about that specific item. So he did note that as critical. That would be something that we would include in the final budget as a critical item for approval as well. So that one isn't currently in the totals that are in the RFD package. The other thing I did want to note, just for more clarity, is in the supplemental information that we provided, I believe on Friday, we had just noted that there was the Cole Crescent paving project of $1.1 million. That one was classified as medium. And we just noted in that report that if we deferred this, that the $50,000 or approximately $50,000 in engineering costs would have to be reworked. I just wanted to provide clarity on that. It's not that it would have to be worked, it was just that the chances of it having to be worked would be increased. So it may or may not happen, but it would just wanted to provide some clarity for you when you're making that decision. So that concludes all of the detail that I wanted to go through, and myself and administration are available for questions.
Any questions regarding the additional information provided for the budget? Councillor Lawerson.
So you mentioned that the engineering might have to get redone for, what did you call it, Cole Crescent? What would trigger a new engineering review? I had to get you up, Bryce.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, through the chair, engineering generally would need to be reviewed to determine if there were any changes to any standards or regulations, as well as often if you potentially if you had a different engineer on the project, they don't often utilize. I'm just trying to be nice. Yeah. They don't often utilize previous engineers' work. They would have to go through most of it themselves and reassess and redo it. So those are kind of the two high potential risks if it was delayed.
So if it was delayed a year, what are the chances that there'd be new regulations coming out? Or that's just a...
Probably very slim, but we just wanted to identify that it could be. Yeah.
Any other questions regarding the information?
No question, just comment. I like the different scenarios. That's kind of I like that it's the way it's laid out. I'm sure you're looking for what people think, and I'm probably in the last one, scenario 4. Looking at what our normal capital budgets are, that's right at the high end of it, so I'm okay with that.
Councillor Kester. If you can just turn your microphone on, please. Thanks.
Just curious, what are the paved roads that we're thinking of not doing?
So on page 61. Under scenario 4.
Oh, yeah, I can answer that. Hello, Council. It would just be the overlay of Range Road 264 from Lyalta north. And then this work we were talking about out here with paving in front of the office here and that merge lane.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Was the plan to pave where it's presently oiled and the highway, or just the highway part?
For this project here, it would be from the highway to the end of this commercial area, industrial area, so about 800 meters total.
Okay.
And then the eastbound merge lane.
Okay.
Any other questions? Does council have any comments, direction for administration, thoughts on the scenarios that are presented? Or Deputy Reeve Clausen provide support for scenario 4?
I'd support scenario 4. On scenario 4, probably get Cody back up here again. We are going to be doing some work on 240 west of 24 at some point in time. Whether the part behind de Havilland is picked up by de Havilland or not, but I would like to see, make sure that we carry forward the engineering on that half-mile section that gets the traffic out of, through the community, through the hamlet of Cheadle. And I think once we start doing that portion, I think we're going to start understanding how much water we have in the area. Because I think what we have budgeted is going to be way under, because I think we've got some issues in that area due to water. But so if we can, would that engineering part still be in, if we go with scenario 4, would the engineering carrying forward on that still be going forward?
Yes, through the chair, it's what's the word? Marked as high, I guess, on the rating scale. So that under that scenario 4, that would still be going forward with that prelim engineering in year 1.
Okay. And is there also, because I would assume that anything that gets done, there's going to have to be some sort of a stormwater, the stormwater stuff is going to be looked at. And I think according to the report that's being given, and probably I should be waiting, but there was not anything on the stormwater, that none of that was going to be addressed, was it? Like the stormwater in the Cheadle area?
Through the chair. So the project is to include some sort of stormwater solution for Cheadle. What that looks like yet, we don't know. We have done prelim reports on that in the past, kind of, working out different scenarios for that, but no solution yet has been determined. So part of that prelim engineering is just kind of a cost savings with combining those two projects, because we definitely will be affecting flows through that low-lying area, building a roadway through there. So it just makes a lot of sense to do it all at once and try and do the construction all at once on both of those. So the estimate put in there for construction right now is very high level, obviously with just our $1 million per mile estimate that we use for roadway. And then we just kind of threw some money in there for the stormwater, not quite knowing what that's going to look like yet, but we'll have that kind of, assessed out by, I would hope, by end of year 1, but we have 2 years of engineering to go through, so.
Thank you.
I just had a question, and then Councillor Kuster.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. I had a question. I was thinking about the Township 234, which is the Glenmore Trail. This is a preliminary for overlay paving next year, like 2024. I drive that sometimes, and I've never noticed that road to be in any, so I understand you need to do engineering before it needs to get to the point, but is that, it's calculated as a medium? Also, I guess, so if it's a medium, come off of scenario 4. Okay, well, that's fine, never mind. Thank you.
Councillor Kuster.
Yeah, I don't agree with putting these paving projects off, especially the one out here. It's a safety concern. It's our own work crews predominantly turning there, plus a development across the way we okayed. If this development was okayed anywhere in the county, requisite, we would have required paving, I'm sure. So I'm not in favor of that one. Normal upkeep of highways. Staff think it's time to put an overlay on it. I support it. We're going to keep deferring these things. And next thing, we got 20 miles of overlay to do. I just heard Glenmore Trails coming up. We can't keep deferring this stuff. We have to keep on top of it, or it's just going to fall apart and we'll either go back to gravel or try and keep what we have. I go back to scenario 1.
Thanks, Councillor Kuster. Councillor Bigger. Actually, I'm just noting the time and recognizing that we have, I'll just look to administration. Should we pause for the engineers or should we continue for a few more minutes?
I do believe that our engineering consultant is here. So we can table this conversation for after and pick it up after. Just for council's just information as well. It's good for administration to get this sense of where council's at in terms of what kind of budget we want to bring back and present to council at the next council meeting for that interim operating and capital approval. Noting that, of course, after this conversation, administration will go back, take this information and get that information to council far ahead of time for its consideration prior to the next council meeting. So again, we can table this conversation at council's will.
Councillor Bigger, I'll just have you hold your comment if that's all right. And we'll resume this discussion following the presentation from the engineers. Good morning.
Presentation up. I don't want to shut that one down yet.
Good morning and welcome. If you can just state your name.
I'm Troy McNeil with McElhaney.
Morning.
Great.
We are ready.
Fantastic. Sorry. Oh, from. Excellent. Well, thanks again for having us here to present on the second presentation for the West Side servicing. There's been some work done here that we want to update you on and walk through where we're at now with the presentation. Been some excellent work done between administration and ourselves, trying to get this fine-tuned a little bit more from the last time. So yeah, we're excited to present this, give you the updates. Just to let you know, there were some last-minute changes. Last night, we got some additional information from regarding rates and stuff on Rocky View County. Doesn't change really much of the recommendations or the ratings, but it does change some of the financial costing. So what you have in your package will be slightly different, but I would say generally not super impactful. So. Okay, so what we'll go over today is we'll just jump back in and kind of refresh ourselves on from the last time what the purpose of study was and the study areas we considered. We did do some desktop analysis on the water wells in the West Highway 1 area. We did go back and look at another 3 wastewater options that we considered. So we'll run through those. Look at our top 3 servicing options for the West Highway 1 wastewater or water servicing, and then top 3 options for wastewater for both Muirfield and for West Highway 1, and then chat about where we go from here. So. So just a refresher, the purpose of the study was to really look at the optimal long-term water, wastewater, and stormwater servicing solutions for the west side communities in the west side servicing area in Wheatland County, and really determine whether the county should provide services, water and wastewater services on their own, or look to regionalization in some form. Similar to last time, these were the communities that we looked at. Muirfield, West Highway 1, Cheadle. If you recall, West Highway 1 and Cheadle we considered as one entity for the analysis, just because they're in close proximity to be serviced very similarly. And then back in the day, we did have Carsland, Speargrass, and the Goldfinch area, which have been pulled out from this report just because the Goldfinch area is now being reviewed under, for the area structure plans being reviewed. So we pulled that out of this report. So we're focusing really on the northern parcels here. Just a refresher here is that, so Lake Samira Field, we've looked at the populations, and everything population-wise is to future build-out, and future build-out is based on any areas that have existing area structure plans. So in the case of Mirafield, it was 2,100 people. In the case of West Highway 1, it was just under 5,500 people. And if you recall from the last presentation, West Highway 1 is a commercial industrial area, but in order to get that back into analyzing these things on an even basis, we worked the flows back into a per capita assumption, so that everything's based on a per capita cost, per capita flow rate. And Cheadle has an existing area structure plan as well, so that was included. Again, just a refresher, so what's on hold? Stormwater drainage for West Highway 1 is on hold, pending further discussions on potential regional systems versus individual systems. Goldfinch area structure plan, like I said, is on hold. It's being reviewed under a separate study, and so that, because that ties into Carsland and Speargrass, that's also kind of been pulled away from this now. Again, a refresher here. What we did is to analyze these, we looked at a number of different factors, and I can get into these if anybody wants to, but I think we've kind of gone through them as per the last presentation. Gave them an importance factor, how important these each of these items were to the county in terms of making their decision process. We then ranked them in terms of the analysis, which were preferred based on each of those items, and then you multiply those out, and then from the what we did is rate, once we got a number here, and you'll see we have the full tables this time to show you. Then we rated them that the intangible factors were raised based on 60% overall rating of that analysis, and the tangible costs were based on a 40% factor. And that ends up giving you a final overall score, allowing us to rank the preferred options. So we'll jump into some of the new stuff now. The desktop study we did for the West Highway 1 area. So here's a bit of an analysis, and I'll get into this a little bit more. These are some of the wells that we were able to find. Bird Environment has a database of all the existing wells that were drilled. They do have information sometimes on the water quality, the flow rates, those kind of things. And so we pulled the database from a Bird Environment here. There were over 60 wells that we found in the area, drilled from 1970 to 2022, so over the last 50 years. So quite a number of wells in the area. Depths range from 25 to 60 meters, so that's reasonable for well drilling. Now the median test rate, so this is just information that comes from the Alberta Environment website, what they tested them at. So the average test rate was about 1 liter per second. That doesn't mean that that's the maximum flow rate you could get out of that aquifer for a well. It's just what they were tested at, likely because that's all the individual needed in terms of water usage for that particular well. There were 10 wells that were between 1.5 and 3 liters a second. And then there were 2 larger wells that were 5 and 7.5 liters per second. Now for context, if we're looking at, sorry, did not, can I go back here? How can I get back? Here. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Sorry about that. So if you're looking at the West Highway 1 and Cheadle area, in order to supply a maximum day flow rate, which is required by Alberta Environment, they want you to supply a maximum day flow rate plus 10%. You're looking at about 40 liters a second, which means you could need in the order of 40 wells all tied together from that aquifer with 20 wells on the average day based on the 1 liter per second. Obviously, if you can do some drill testing and find out that there's
more available flow per well in certain locations. That would be sort of the next steps to figure out exactly how many we need, but we based everything on our analysis on the 1 liters per second, because that's what sort of the average over the full 60 wells that we looked at. Water quality is reasonably good. It's soft water. Fluoride in some of the wells is above the Canadian guidelines, but not all of them. Unfortunately, the water quality that we reviewed, most of it was from 30 plus years ago. A lot of the newer wells didn't have any information on the water quality. And of course, dissolved solids, sodium, iron, aesthetic objective type components were also slightly above the requirements or the preferred levels that Alberta Environment recommends. Just to note that fluoride can be treated. Reverse osmosis is a way to treat. There's also another bunch of other treatment options that you can do to get rid of fluoride. In terms of getting rid of TSS and stuff, that's filtration. So you can deal with a lot of these aesthetic objectives here, depending on reverse osmosis or the type of treatment you go with. And again, they're aesthetic, so they're not something that's a requirement to get rid of or to deal with, but certainly if you want to, there are ways to deal with that. And so just in summary, wells are probably an option in that area. There seems to be a fairly decent aquifer, a lot of wells in there. It's certainly from the desktop study perspective. Next steps would be to sort of go into further analysis and do a little more investigation on the existing wells, the existing licenses, see what's there, and probably do some testing to see what some of these wells and drawdown tests would be. Like I say, because the 1 liter per second is just based on what they were tested at, not necessarily what the yield is. Wastewater servicing. We did look at 3 additional options for wastewater servicing. One was the Omni processing system and locating that actually directly in the Lake Samira field. And I'll speak more to that next. We looked at a force main from Cheadle to a lagoon with irrigation at Cheadle. And then we also looked at a force main that actually connected, rather than connecting at the south end of Strathmore near the highway, up there's a lift station at the northwest portion of Strathmore that shortens the route up a little bit in terms of the force main length. So I allowed to get some of the capital costing down by a mile or so. So this is schematically what the Omni processor system looks like. This one here would only do about half of the development. But what generally happens is you've got a 10 by 10 meter building for the Omni processor system. And what you see here with the vertical filter beds and the horizontal filter beds, they're actually underground. So all that land can be used for something if you want, whether it's play space, parks, amenity features, that type of thing. You can put these other places and actually grow crops below them or above them and have that system underneath, so you avoid the land loss. We have shown, just so we didn't have to do any land purchase, you also need a disposal field, which is treated water, but you need infiltration into the ground. So rather than trying to go to surface and getting a discharge through a canal or through anything, we just looked at putting a disposal field or an infiltration gallery field here. Whether that moved off-site, on-site, whatever, we'd have to look at that. But essentially the treatment for the entire system, if we use the south parcel as well, you have the land to do all the treatment, and you just have to look at where you want to actually dispose of the water, whether you want to use up existing land in Muirfield, which obviously is good development area. It's got certainly value. And so whether that's a logical location or not, that's to be determined. Any questions on the Omni processor option? Just out of curiosity while I'm going. Yes.
What's the process for it?
I call it a septic field on steroids is basically what it is. So there's some pre-treatment. It goes through a treatment system ahead of time through some of the solids and things like that. So there is a bit of a process that way. So a mechanical process. And then it's a biological process underground with a bunch of special medium that it filters through. And so it's, like I say, it filters through the horizontal beds, the vertical beds, with a bunch of different science behind it. I'm certainly not the expert in that, I will fully admit. And then at the end of the system, you've got clean water that then can just infiltrate into the ground. And they do have systems approved already by Alberta Environment up in Clearwater County that should be operating in the next couple of months here. So
So it's more or less a septic tank that's larger and mechanical, I guess.
but yeah, mechanical on the front end in terms of removing some of that stuff. And then it's all biological beds. So it's not actually tanks. It's actually, they do line the bed so it doesn't infiltrate into the ground. And then it's set up to work its way through the system. All the little bugs do their things and work through the system. And then at the end, you get high quality groundwater or high quality water to be discharged. So, yeah. And whether there's an option to work with the golf course on something like that and discharge into the irrigation ponds with some disinfection. I mean, there's some things to be worked out, but the golf course uses a lot of stormwater for irrigation. So if this is clean water at the time, disinfection may be an option, and maybe discharge into the ponds and use that for irrigation as well. So
Would it remove the salts from the water? They're using surface water now hard.
Yeah.
People soften it, add salt.
Right.
And you treat it, the salt stays in the water. There was a fear of the salt burning the grass on the golf course.
Okay.
Is that a concern? Or?
That is a great question that I would have to get back to you on, to be honest. I don't know what would happen to salts. I imagine they would stay unless you add another secondary process to it. I don't see that being a natural biological process, to be removing salts. Yeah. If you'd like more information, I can certainly follow up after this meeting. And
just curious. I'll wait.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. This was the option we looked at, just going down, working the wastewater from Muirfield with a water line or a wastewater line down to Cheadle, buying some land to build a lagoon and then use that treated wastewater for irrigation, just as an option that we wanted to look at. And then this is the northern option. So our original connection point was down here. We had a line that ran from Muirfield down along to the highway, essentially through the West Highway 1 area and over to Strathmore here. There is a lift station up in here, so we did look at this option in terms of potentially tying to that lift station there, which you can see takes a little bit of line length off. And the one thing it does do actually is it allows us to downsize this line, simply because we aren't going over. There's a bit of a hill here that we got to get over from a hydraulic basis, and so the size of line to get over that versus to come across here where we missed that actually allows us to downsize the line. So it's was an interesting option to look at for sure. So water servicing, just an update here again. Water servicing we talked about before. We looked at WID, East Calgary Regional Water Line, and the wells. It includes things for the capital operations costs. We include the licensing costs, water storage, water treatment, water pumping, treated water storage, treated water pumping, and any raw water supply mains and treated water supply mains. So essentially everything is generally included in terms of the costing what we could come up with. One thing, again, the things that aren't considered is once we get to a local area, so we get to Lake Muirfield or we get to a certain location, any local pumping infrastructure is not included. So once we get to, like, we build a reservoir and pump station in Westway Highway 1, then to distribute that through that West Highway 1 area, that's not part of this. That's a completely different realm that usually is looked after by the developers. They develop out the development. So. And I apologize, these slides, hopefully you were able to kind of get them in your package there and see what they were. So for the water options for West Highway 1, really there were 3 options we looked at. The raw water supply wells at West Highway 1. You can see here that it did come out. By the way, green is the kind of #1 option. Yellow is usually second, is color coded as second option, and the red or pink is color coded as third option, consistently throughout the rankings. So West Highway 1 with the raw water wells actually came out as the preferred option, provided we can, with the additional investigation with wells and stuff, that if we do that to confirm the aquifer's got the capacity, that would be preferred option with a 53 rating. The second was to actually come from WID, close by, about 5 kilometers away, and bring water in from there. WID, the one thing there that you wonder why maybe it doesn't rate higher is that because you only have water supply 5 months a year, you do have to build a significant amount of raw water storage. If you think about Lakes and Muirfield and the raw water storage there, you're looking at about 3 times that capacity. So you're looking at significantly more land, significantly more capital costs to get that going. And because you got to, pull off for 5 months, so therefore you have to store the 12 months of storage and those raw water cells. So. Wastewater servicing, again, just a refresher here, include the lift stations, included the forest mains and disposal and treatment. We did look at the regional connections to Strathmore and to Langdon, and third-party treatment disposal costs were included to the best of the ability for us to sleuth out kind of and work through the bylaws and through some background investigation what we anticipate the cost may be. Certainly there are no firmed up costs in terms of connection costs or treatment costs to either of these. It's certainly a council to council probably discussion type thing going forward, but we've done our best to pull out numbers that seem to be reasonable from existing bylaws or from historical agreements, that type of thing. So, and again, not considered for wastewater is when you get the local collection system before you treat for regional, and wastewater treatment plants were not considered. The reason wastewater treatment plants were not considered, we considered the Omni processor system. We did consider lagoons. The reason we did not go further on the wastewater treatment plants is if the lagoon system or other system was not a preferred option to start with. Generally, your MBR treatment systems can be as expensive or more expensive from a capital cost, and they're significantly more for an operations cost. So if they didn't come into play, then we sort of put those out of there. There's certainly challenges with getting new outfalls, new disposals, Alberta environment, those kind of things. So we looked at sort of I would say the tried and true that the county is familiar with in terms of system operation, with the exception of the Omni processor system, which is, a process. Like I say, it's a process that's approved and is relatively simple to operate at the end of the day in terms of the level of operators and stuff. So we stayed away from the more complex wastewater treatment plants for that reason. I don't know, Brad, is there any further comments you wanted to have on the wastewater plants or anything, or is that cover it?
You're good.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I apologize again for these tables. PowerPoint is not the greatest at putting all these systems together here in terms of being able to read these. You can see I'll just flip through here. We did look at quite a number of options for wastewater options for the Lakes and Muirfield, like we had chatted about previously. Everything from going to Strathmore to Langdon to Carsland, its own system for operations, its own lagoon, that type of thing. And so what came out of this is from a overall rating system, if you were to go from Muirfield to Strathmore through West Highway 1, pick up West Highway 1 population as well at the same time to average out the costs. Look at your constraints there and add in the operations costs and connection fees to Strathmore. That rated as a number 2 option. And then the other 2 options, first and third, were actually the Omni processor system, either on the Lakes and Muirfield itself, which was number 1, or a system approximately 10 kilometers away was where we had put it, piping it 10 kilometers away and purchasing the land that's needed for that, and then disposing underground. Now, that being said, there's a lot of options here that actually do rank reasonably close, I would say, in terms of in terms of where Langdon fits in terms of some of these options as well. I can't really tell you these are what numbers come out to the recommended options, the preferred options, but we are still, at this point in the game, without further investigation into really finalizing some numbers with the other municipalities and really confirming those and tying those down and getting better direction from them on their willingness or want to collaborate with the county and vice versa. That this is where they come out, but probably it'll be up to administration and council to sort of have further discussions on this report once presented and determine sort of where the next steps are to go. So just a couple of things here, just wanted to highlight. So for, in terms of the cost comparisons between Strathmore and Langdon, because the Strathmore option you'll see does seem to pop up a little bit more relevantly, or it seems to be a slightly preferred option over Langdon, although not significantly. For Muirfield, we just want to talk about, so a connection cost to Strathmore for Strathmore was considerably less, simply because one, the plant was funded, significantly funded by provincial grant funding. And there's also, because the plant was also got the benefits of scale, so it's sized for 30,500 population. And we're only using for Muirfield, for instance, a very small percentage of that population. The percentage of costs are significantly less than, say, the expansion to Rocky View County or in Langdon, which is only sized for a significantly less population with the expansion. And because of that, because there's also not as much grant funding to that based on their bylaws, it's about twice the cost per person to connect, roughly. So. For regionalization comparisons, just for a bit of a history on this. So generally regional grants will cover up 90% of the third-party costs for improvements. And Muirfield WWMP, which we're looking into right now, which the grant has been applied for, may be eligible for 60% of the capital funding. None of the funding mechanisms have been included in the costing to date. So any of these costs right now have assumed that there is no funding mechanism in place with the provincial government, the state where it's at, and having no money. We've just analyzed these all based on a one-to-one basis, which is assuming that there is no grant funding available, but there is potential for grant funding to cover 90% of regional expansions to regional facilities. Wanted to point out that, and we'll do some comparison on some regionalizations here. Generally, when you regionalize, one of the things is you'll get significantly larger capital costs in terms of things, but because those capital costs are being spread amongst a much more significant population, the per capita cost can go down quite significantly. So that's, and we'll take a look at that in a couple of scenarios here. Operational costs tend to be generally very similar across the board, whether you have 1,000 people or 10,000 people hooking up, simply because a plant costs a certain amount to operate. Yeah, so just as a comparison here, we just wanted to compare Langdon on a regional basis. These are all the same options as were before. We've just extracted them just to highlight sort of the benefits of regionalization or how that affects your per capita costs. If you go to from Muirfield to Delroy to Langdon, of course, we have a line there already. So your cost per person ends up being about $13,000 per person. If you go Muirfield to West Highway 1 to Langdon on its own, it's around $11,000. It goes down simply because we are able to downsize some line sizes and things based on the topography. But if you do go Muirfield to Langdon and add the West Highway 1 and Cheadle in, although you can see the costs are almost double from 24 million to 49 million, your actual per capita costs are almost half, because now you're getting the benefits of that regionalization. The cost to upsize that infrastructure per capita is less. So even though you're putting larger line size in, more capital, you can service a lot more by going up a couple of line sizes. And that's, so you can see, even though you got double the cost, you're actually half the cost per capita for a regional system. So just to give you a comparison there. Similarly, if you look at sort of wastewater to Strathmore, if you went directly to Strathmore through Highway 1, it's around $12,000, $13,000 per person. We were able to actually get that down if we added a lift station, believe it or not, in Muirfield, simply because we can downsize with the second section of the line. It goes down to about 10,800. But again, if you go all the way to Strathmore, for an example, and add the West Highway 1 and Cheadle into it, you're almost a third the cost. You can get down to $4,300 per person. So that is the benefits on the capital side for regionalization. If you look through the numbers on the operational side, they're generally very consistent. Like I say, there's you know, if you're going regional, you have a certain rate that the third party is going to charge you for the treatment process, conveyance, those kind of things. So they end up actually not too far out of the realm. So the real difference is the capital costs, but the regionalization does, even though your capital costs go up considerably for regionalization, your per capita person costs go down quite considerably. So. And then we went over this last time, the stormwater options. Muirfield had a master infrastructure you completed, and the system is designed to handle all its stormwater with some additional stormwater ponds. So really it makes sense to keep it on its own system. West Highway 1 and Cheeto, we sort of spoke about last time, is sort of on hold in terms of whether the two options are really zero discharge based on the current requirements, or looking to a regional system that will require some further investigation. And that's sort of a separate component, separate study. And we do have Speargrass, Carsland, Goldfinch, which really are not necessarily part of this, but stormwater and Speargrass would be its own development that's designed to handle what it would need to be. Carsland, any new development would be on its own, likely with holding release rates. And Goldfinch is something that, like I said, the ASP is under review. And depending on what happens with that, would determine whether there's a regional solution there or whether that would be individual lot owners or some sort of combined system. So last time, October 11th, if we can recall back then, we had all this work completed. Got the decision matrix out. We'd done a bunch of analysis. We'd presented. What's happened since then really is we updated the routing maps, looked at a few different options as we discussed in terms of the water wastewater solutions. We've updated the flow charts. We've updated the costing based on some additional information that's come through for some of the connection fees and the water usage and wastewater usage rates from third parties. We completed the desktop well assessment, and here we are. So. And so from our perspective, the next step would be, based on conversations here, is to finalize the report, get that completed, signed off, and then have administration take the report and bring back options from the report to council for further investigation and study. So in terms of moving forward with some preferred options. So I guess I'll open it up to questions now, which I'm sure there are many now that this is a second report and you had a ton of time to absorb all the previous information. So
Any questions regarding the updated report?
yes.
I have, so when I look at so I guess I just want to maybe talk to council first about, I know we've reviewed previously that matrix of importance. But when I look at how things fall out now, I wonder if like our tangible costs are rated at 40% and our intangibles at 60. And I wonder if we have that backwards. Isn't the cost, shouldn't it be considered more? When I see that on our, on the wastewater one, our second best choice costs $34 million in capital and $49 million in operational. It surprised me. And I wondered if we weren't considering the costs strongly enough in the weightings. So I apologize that it's kind of at this late date that you've already, we've reviewed that previously, but now that I see it in it, the results that come out of it, I was surprised, I guess, is my first comment. And so when I look at the water results, and the best option here is the wells. Is that looking at 40 wells or 20 wells? The cost 21 million.
That's looking at 40 wells.
40 wells. Okay.
Yeah, and making some assumptions on the line sizes, how many would be connected in a series type thing over to a raw water reservoir and then a treatment plant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you tell me why the operational costs of the ECRWL line would be so high? Like it's almost twice as much as the other options. Why would that be?
That's based on the assumed bulk water rate that they would charge you. So they're going to charge you a cost for water to from that water line. So that's based on what we've based that on is the City of Calgary bulk water rates at this point in time. So again, further discussion with City of Calgary, whether there's a better rate out there or whether they would charge municipality the same bulk water rate. That would be something that needs to be further identified, but that's a general cost. Is you've got a lot of costs in there from just actually purchasing that water for them. And then also with the East Calgary Regional Water Line, you do have to actually buy your own license from a capital cost. You have to be able to transfer license. Your current situation with WID is they allocate volume to you, but you don't own the license. So you actually would have to, in this City of Calgary case, to use the East Calgary Regional Water Line, actually go out, purchase license that you've done with Antera and those kind of things, buy the license so that you have the license to transfer to City of Calgary for that line.
And I understand that's difficult to buy. It's not available, or are you?
You can find licenses. It's a process, and it's always a risk what they're going to charge you for it. But you did purchase one recently through the Antera license, got a fairly significant volume for that to be able to transfer over to, I think it was to Speargrass Carsland area, Brad.
Yeah, just to add to to Troy's comments. So for the licensing, yeah, there aren't new licenses being provided, but purchasing of existing licenses can happen. The other thing to point out here that for council's consideration in reviewing the report is the numbers that Troy has provided in his presentation are for full build out of these areas. So those operational costs that you see, those wouldn't be the full operational costs right away. Those would be built up over time. One thing it does show us, though, is at full build out or even at the beginnings of any of these options, is it does show the costs that would be incurred by residents and developers in terms of, and you can kind of weigh that in terms of the attractiveness investing in Wheatland County. If this option is going to cost more to them by developing in the county or less to them. So those operational costs do provide that as a comparison between the options. But just as a note, this is the costs that we're seeing are for full build out of the full population that are noted in these tables. When we do go and look at the various options and details, the options that we may identify as preferred options, we would also look at the possibility of staging out some of this development. And so what you're seeing right now, even on the capital cost, is the cost of the full build out. We would look for opportunities of potential upfront cost savings in order to spread those costs out over time. That might be more of an option for some options than others. However, we would still look for those opportunities. So just some points for consideration.
So I was just thinking about the water rates, and so the operational cost includes the cost of the water, but that would be forwarded on to the end user. So I can see it as an attraction perspective, but really our operational costs wouldn't include the cost of the water, really. I mean, it would be a flow through, right?
Yeah, through the intention with the operational costs, assuming full cost recovery of those utilities those costs would be passed on to the user. That would include really, again, if you're looking at full cost recovery of capital costs and operations, you'd be looking at cost recovery of capital costs through levies and then operational costs through usage fees.
So just clarification. Like I like the fact that raw water's the preferred choice. The 40 wells, I'm not sure, like, have you talked to Rocky View Utilities, the ones that supply water to groundwater, from groundwater to Langdon?
Mm-hmm.
Langdon's like 6,000 people. I don't imagine they have 40 wells kicking around.
They have 3 wells in that aquifer.
Okay, so theoretically, we could be, only because I have inside knowledge, I have local knowledge of how much water's in the Cheadle area.
Yep.
That theoretically there could be, just, we might only have 4 wells that we need to at full build out that would supply enough water. I know how much water goes through that.
Yes.
And that would substantially cut down all, everything, right? Like operating costs, absolutely.
Yeah, you have maybe 4 or 5 large wells in that aquifer. Yeah.
And I understand that you have to give us the worst case scenario, like what, you know, what it looks like. But I'm thinking that we will be substantially, I would assume that we'll be somewhere in, by full build out, we'll be somewhere in the same area that Langdon is right now. So we have a lot of water there.
Yeah, no further investigation of that aquifer and actually doing some proper drill testing and maximizing it. Like I say, a lot of them were at that 1 liter per second just historically. And that could be, like I say, that's not a function of what the yield is. It's just what it was actually tested at. And like I say, if they were residential or low use, that was all they would want to test them at. So that would be sort of the next thing. So it is very possible that there could be significantly less wells than that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We have the information, because I'll just bring this on. ISL did a Cheadle master drainage plan.
Mhm.
And we did that in 2017. And I know that we have numbers like of water that isn't stormwater flowing through that area of 180,000 gallons a day. So, you know, it's all, you know, water's sort of water. It can all be treated and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, we have some of that work done. You know, I'm pretty sure you guys haven't had the opportunity to look at that, but I know we have this stuff in-house. I have some of the pages of that report. It's a pretty big report on just how much water's in the area. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for the comments. Do appreciate that. So, yeah.
Other questions or discussion? Councillor Larson.
So you mentioned earlier in the presentation about reverse osmosis. So I'm just wondering if that's going to be something necessary, because from what I understand from RO systems, and I have one at my farm, is for every gallon of good water you get, there's 4 gallons of waste. So that's, you know, that's a significant calculation you'd have to add in if you're going to, you know, dump 4 for every 1 you get.
Yeah, the challenge we have with this is that most of the water quality information we have is reasonably old in terms of that, unfortunately. So what we did note was that there was the potential for, like, fluoride was the big one. It's above the requirement. So if you do have high fluoride, you would need to get that down based on the Alberta environment requirements. So again, further testing and getting some quality results on the water would be probably a very prudent thing to do in the next steps. Whether that is required or not. Like I say, water quality does change 30 years from now, 30 years ago to today, and depending where you drill. So we'd want to be looking at investigating some of those wells a little further, maybe using some of the existing old wells and drawing some samples and doing some pump testing and seeing what we could do there if that was an option to be selected. I agree with you. Yes, there is reverse osmosis is a expensive treatment process to operate, and there is a lot of waste generated from that. So that's something definitely to consider. And it, of course, depends on the level of fluoride that you have to remove, right? So.
Any other questions regarding the report? Councillor Kester.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just curious, if we put just an independent system at Lake Summerfield and one at Highway West, and just do those communities, we would save a few kilometers of pipe.
Are you talking for wastewater or water? Wastewater, yeah.
Yeah. We would totally own it ourselves. We would never have to worry about, oh, our system's bigger or fees, or we're in total control. I'd like to know what the difference is to that long term. I have a hard time running a line from Muirfield to West Highway 1, where we have a water problem already, and taking more water there and try and get rid of it. You know, if we can get rid of it, deal with it at the source, I think is a better option.
Yeah, and I think what you'll find here, and that's a good comment, in terms of the Muirfield wastewater options, the 3 options that the first and third option that came up as the preferred options were the Omni processor system, either at Merrifield, dealing with it on its own, or taking it approximately 10 kilometers away. We just kept that because that's where would place a lagoon as well for comparison. Away. Actually, a lagoon came in as a as number 4 actually, so it's actually quite close in terms of running a lagoon rather than the Omni processor system. And the only reason that the second option that you've got there, like I say, is really due to bringing all the population, if you ran a line from Muirfield into West Highland, picked up all that volume and then took it somewhere, right? So your top 3 of 4 are independent options actually for Muirfield itself.
So is there any smell associated with this Omni system? I know lagoons, people are petrified.
No, there's no smell on the system. It's all treated underground. And like I say, you can farm above it, you can put parks above it, whatever you need to do. And so it's all biological underground. And there is, as far as I understand, and talking to Clearwater County and the suppliers here, there is no smell because of that. It's all treated underground. So there's not because you don't have an open air system, right? It's all underground. So similarly, I mean, you might, on a septic field, you typically don't have a lot of odor unless something bad happens to it, in which case it's venting a bunch of stuff because it's not treating properly, right? So.
Is there an operating system around, or is that where is this just?
They will have one operating in Clearwater County in about 2 months' time. And so we can certainly look at arranging if anybody was interested in taking a look at that system or talking to anybody on their administration. I'm sure we can try and sort that out and have a look at that. But that's one that ADNET actually does have approval in terms of things. So it's actually approved, licensed to go. So it should be up and running in February. So
in the process of licensing it, there must have been an extensive study done on it or some pilot projects done.
Yeah, there's actually an extensive number of projects done actually in the US. And of course the climate's different. So, got to bear that in mind. So what's happened with that is that Alberta Environment is actually requiring that we essentially for that system, you double the capacity of what's been done in the States. That's because of the colder climate and the considerations there in terms of making sure that it can handle what it needs to handle to do the proper treatment. So this system in Clearwater will continue to be monitored. It gets monitored and whatnot. They do want some additional monitoring for the first year, but they are licensed and approved, ready to go. So yeah, I mean, I think the thing to realize about that is it's not really, I wouldn't say that system is a new technology. It's a bunch of existing technologies that's been kind of put together to get the best of the best system to make everything work, right? So so there's a lot of components of it that are all proven technologies now. It has been proven out. And like I say, there's a lot of them operating in the States, and then Clearwater County's got one. I believe there's one in BC operating right now as well. So, and yeah, so if there's additional information that people want on that or anything, we can certainly work with administration here, maybe to get some further details if there's specific questions that council would like answered.
So if we build one, you mentioned it would service 1,000 people, half of the build out.
Yeah, for Lakes of Merrifield, the one that we showed there in terms of fitting on that one parcel, which was, I believe that was the seniors complex was going to be there. So it does, take away from that. You can't put facilities over it, but you can use it for park space or those kind of things. It would service about 1,000 people. Yeah.
So is there room in that parcel to put another facility up?
You would.
The other 1,000 when they come, if they come.
What we looked at is if you go to the south where I guess the Mercantile building is, a community center is there, that lot would fit that in. The only thing that you have that's a challenge is just where you're going to dispose of this in situ. We've shown the disposal field, like the infiltration gallery up sort of in where those residential lots would be. That may not be the best place. You might want to purchase some land just adjacent or somewhere where you've got that. Or like I say, if there's an ability to work with the golf course storm system or anything like that, there's a lot of things that we could consider. I don't know where it would go. We'd have to definitely be further discussions, but giving up good residential land for infiltration, probably not ideal, but it would at least get you through your immediate situation in terms of a staging.
That's where it started, a lagoon in that corner.
Sorry, Councillor Laprise and then Councillor Eckert.
Could you tell me, I missed, what is the MBR system? does that stand for?
Mechanical bioreactor. Or membrane or mechanical? Now you got me. It's a bioreactor, though. It's a higher level treatment system. Yeah.
Did you say that there was an issue with using that kind of a system?
There's not an issue with it. They work really well. Capital costs can be slightly more depending nowadays in terms of some of the, like the Omni processor or Lagoon. What the challenge becomes is the operation costs are significantly more. In terms of operations, you've got membrane filters, all that kind of stuff that you got to deal with. They're higher pressure systems, so you're running pumps, you're using more energy, those kind of things more. So they are significantly more to operate, probably in the order of double what, like the Omni processor system, and certainly significantly more than operating a Lagoon, which, has a lift station, and you go check on it once every so often, make sure things are good, and make sure you're not contaminating the groundwater, those kind of things. So you have the need for a higher level operator. So instead of your level operators that are running things like the Lagoons right now, you do need a specialist with a level 3 or level 4 operator's license to operate those kind of systems. So
I just see this option number 16 doesn't look terribly out of line. Muirfield to an MBR system that would be 10K east of Muirfield, so that like the Omni processing looks good, except that where do you put these underground lagoons? I don't know if that'll work. So this might be a better
so with a Lagoon or with an MBR system running those, especially with like a Lagoon is a better option for disposal, because you can go under the code of practice and dispose at 6 weeks a year like you're doing Muirfield, or not Muirfield, or Carsland right now. An MBR system would run continuously. You typically wouldn't store that treated water, and so you need actually a license and an approval with Alberta Environment. There's a certain mixing ratio you have to have on your discharge bodies. I think it's 10% mix ratio. And of course, you have to deal with all the downstream landowners for discharge. So from the approvals perspective, it certainly can be more challenging to operate any sort of thing that's a continuous operation with a discharge point. Yeah.
Councillor Bigger. Councillor Eckert said his question was answered. Councillor Bigger.
And so how many acres does the Omni system take? Like, well, how big is that area?
The whole thing is about 25 acres, I believe.
25 acres? Thanks.
Yeah, including the disposal field and
Thanks for all this. I think we should look at doing a little bit further work on the raw water for the wells, do a drilling program. That'll give you the data that you need to know what the quality is and the quantity that because they do pump testing and stuff. The Omni project, I'd like to look at, see that firsthand and do it. First, I don't really know much about it, but it's very new technology. I just want to see life cycle, how long it's going to be there, if it's going to last. And then possibly look at if it's a good treatment process and it removes the salts, then we might be able to discharge into WID infrastructure. I know we've talked to them in the past, and they said after the season, you could dump in the wintertime, right before, like in fall. But then you have to have storage too. But they might look at a continuous discharge if it's good quality water. Like it can't be substandard waters. But that's just something we'd have to look at.
Any other questions?
So when you're talking WAD, that means with the plant or off the Omni?
Once the treated water's done, you have to ask them if they take it.
Oh, I see.
If they would or they wouldn't, they'll just be yes or no. Right now, it'll probably be no, but you might have to do some engineering approvals to them to show that it can meet their quality. And it may not happen, but it'd be worth the ask.
Just a follow-up, because Scott and myself went to that Dawson Lake, whatever, in Chestermere, whatever, I forget, Dawson Crossing, whatever it's called. And they're having this similar issue, so that if WID may make that decision that the water that is coming out of these new systems that they're coming is good water. It's they've got I believe they even figured out a way to remove the phosphates, right? We probably need to figure out a way to lobby WID, because it helps them, it gets them more water and all this kind of stuff for their irrigation. So I think maybe it's something we should have a sit down and, I mean, and this is a multi-level discussion to have with WID, with probably all the irrigation systems.
And as a note, WID was also looking at the stormwater project, and the name eludes me right now.
CSMI.
CSMI, that was a solution to a lot of these problems, well, at least on the storm side, but the standards could be a little different for discharge of lagoons as well. And that was a project that we have a Bible here somewhere on the amount of work that was done. I don't believe, I think Rocky View is joined on to it, and Chestermere may possibly, but it came before us before. We haven't joined into it at this time, but this may be the time. We have to kind of review that too. I don't know if that was part of the consideration.
Yeah, through the Reeve, there was a report done a couple of years ago with a consultant just in regards to the cost viability to the county and whether participation in the CSMI was advantageous to the county. We did pull up that report recently. We saw a couple things that we thought could be further addressed in that report. So we're actually doing that right now as part of this study in the background. We expect to have that report in the next month or two. And then once we have that, we can bring those results back to council in terms of what the additional information is that are in that report.
Yeah, I think when that report came to council prior, we didn't have the development pressures that we have now. And at the time, it didn't seem feasible because the amount of money, it was better to utilize land. And now that we're kind of on this complete opposite, we don't want to get rid of the land for development. We'd rather, so I think it's going to change.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, perhaps a motion to accept the report as information.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's take a 5-minute. We'll reconvene at 10:30.
You have been muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice. All recording and transcription are turned off. This call is being recorded. Mute off.
We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll resume our discussion around agenda item 2.31. I think Councillor Bigger, you had a question or a comment.
It was about the Cole Crescent paving in Carson. Was it for stormwater basically, or what's the biggest issue there?
Through the chair, Cole Crescent was recommended based on resurfacing as the surface was starting to deteriorate. There's also some drainage concerns, stormwater drainage concerns that will be resolved as part of this, and also a couple small sections of sanitary line will be replaced that are currently not operating properly. So kind of multiple things, but the main reason for the project is surface degradation, current state of the surface, and some storm drainage, especially in I'm going to call them the bulbs, the two kind of cul-de-sac turns.
Oh, yeah.
We do have some drainage issues in those areas.
Backup problems, right?
Yeah. So that's the main focus of that. It was identified as part of the municipal infrastructure plan report done a few years ago. So it's one of those projects.
Now, there was some new drainage put in. Will that help the sewer problem? No, probably not.
Through the chair, no, the sewer problem is we're just replacing some pipes strictly for the sewer, the wastewater lines. The drainage is more the or the curb drainage.
Yep.
We do have some low spots along those bulbs that we're getting some water penetration into the base, which is also why a top lift or a new top lift will help with that as well. So,
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Just a question to administration following up on Councillor Custer's question or comments around the safety with the paving. Can administration speak to, like, I understand the rationale for the project, but maybe to the risk level with like the approach to the highway as it is currently and the risk with deferring that?
Through the chair. So the risk we have, I guess, is what we're experiencing, why this project came to the forefront, is really with the industry across the road from us and the amount of large heavy loads that come through there, and then our own trucking. Obviously, that this is our primary base of operations. So day in and day out, we have large trucks crossing this highway, and I would hate to say most of our work is out east, but when it comes to drainage repairs and things of that nature, a lot of our trucking and all that goes east. So we're constantly turning that way. And with this bit of a hill we have on the highway, as that traffic pops over the hill, once you're crossing with a large truck, you can't stop, you're committed, because if you stop, now you're blocking the westbound lanes. So there's been definitely some close calls over the years, and it's just something that we feel needs to be done just to make it safer all the way around, and not only for our neighbors adjacent to us, but just for county operations itself.
Thank you.
If I may, through the chair, just add to that. One comment on this project too is it is combined the intersection upgrade as well as the paving. So in order to address the safety issues of the intersection, one thing we could do is split that project into two, deal with the intersection now, and then defer the paving project if council wish to do that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Bigger.
And this was something that the province wouldn't help out with?
Through the chair, no, it hasn't been identified as a priority for them. It's not something they deem anywhere near the top of their list, so they wouldn't be putting any money into it at all.
Okay.
I liked it better when I could turn them on and they'd stay on. Anyway, anything that works. I go home that way a lot. And I can be at the intersection, nope, nobody's coming, and I'll get halfway around and there's somebody right there on my tail. Doesn't mean they're going the speed limit, but not everybody does. But still, it's not that safe. And I don't dingle around on an intersection like truck pulling a trailer load of pipe or something. It is a hazard.
So my understanding would be that you'd put on a turn, just lengthen it, or there isn't actually one there, is there?
Through the chair, so it would just be I guess they call it a merge lane essentially. So it'd be about a half mile in length, enough for those large trucks to get up to speed and actually merge safely into traffic. Trying not to crisscross with the traffic exiting to 21.
24 and 1. There's one there.
Yes, exactly. It'd be exactly what you'd be looking at. Same thing.
Is there any liability for us doing road work on a road that actually belongs to, now, does it belong to the federal or the provincial government? It is the Trans-Canada Highway. I'm just wondering how that works. Let's say we built it and something happened. Are we going to be on the hook for that? Because they'll say, well, you didn't build that road right or something.
So through the construction process, that we already have obtained a roadside development permit, so they've signed off on the drawings and all the engineering.
All I needed to know. Perfect.
Perfect.
Just also curious, because out east in Councillor Laprise's area, I noticed they did a bunch of work this summer and they were doing some upgrades to intersections and things like that. We didn't pay for any of that, correct? That would have been, they deemed that there was a hazard to an intersection or there high traffic flows, so they would do that. So just wondering if they, when they're coming this way to overlay, if they do the same thing here.
Through the chair, there's definitely potential they could. They just might do minor upgrades such as widenings of the turn radiuses and stuff. Something of a merge lane of that size might not be something that's on the radar, but it could be something that would be considered. Some of those upgrades, I believe we lobbied for, like specifically like the turning lane on the 901 down there back, I want to say over 10 years ago, maybe longer. So, they will eventually get to these projects, but it might be 10 years away.
Maybe there's a potential we do the base work and when they put the overlay on, they could pave the whole thing, partner up with them.
Through the chair, so currently the way the permit is written, we would be responsible for the whole thing, as far as base paving and everything, and then with room for future overlay and that in the future. But essentially, they would be responsible for any maintenance of that item going forward, though.
So I was just thinking about the budget overall, and I was just trying to find, I think I had asked admin and I think I got an answer, but I can't find it, about, so I think we had 20% of our last year's budget that didn't get done because of various issues with supply chain and other things. If that is a normal, like I can't remember if this is probably not normal. I mean, we had some supply chain problems. We'll probably have them going forward another year. So if we looked at our $25 million budget and expect that we are probably not going to do 20% of it, that's $5 million off.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could look at the full budget and go ahead with all the projects, and then knowing that we are not likely going to spend 25 million. It's just a thought.
Yeah, you're right. Just about every year, I can't say exactly. We've always had a surplus, and that's because a project's not getting done. And no different, this budget has a line item in there for projects that from last year.
Okay.
Right, so it keeps them current, keeps them healthy, and we'll get them done. If we put it on the back list for another year to keep our taxes down, yeah, that's great for this year and we can all be happy. Pretty soon next year comes, whatever that comes, and there has to be a huge rate increase to catch up. And that's the part that scares me. High definitely has to get done. Medium, yes, go after that. The lower stuff, they'll be medium next year. I don't want to have high this year and get higher next year and double the high for next year when all these medium projects all of a sudden, for whatever reason, weather, conditions, traffic, whatever, everything changes.
Councillor Eckert and then Deputy Reeve Clausen.
So the problem I have with if we say we're going to spend 25 million, we have to budget for 25. We have to increase taxes for 25. So then if we don't spend it, then it just goes into reserves. But then we've taken the money from the people that need it the most, which is our ratepayers. And it's our job to keep the prices down. It seems to me that with this discussion that there is a good opportunity that when the province comes forward with, or whoever's doing the overlay on it, that we could talk to them about this. And at that point in time, see if they will do this. If it's like, we cannot make the world a perfectly safe place for everybody. It just doesn't happen that way. Wish we could, there's just not that much amount of money. But if we are going to do our job, which is to use the most of the money that we're collecting from our ratepayers and do it responsibly, there has to be cuts somewhere. I don't think I can, there's no way I can, in this day and age, go ahead and say I'm going to vote for paving something that should be probably either paid for by the people across the road that are using it, or improved on or paid for by the federal tax money, because we could use some of that coming back. So yeah, so I'm still, we are not in a static deal. We have got businesses coming online. We got people coming into this county. It's not like, well, there's nothing happening down the road. We know there's stuff coming down the road. It'll take time to get to that point where it's there, but there is stuff coming down the road. So no, I'm definitely not for doing any extra work, spending any extra money, raising taxes.
My justification for scenario 4 with the paving in particular right now is I know that the market is volatile. I know oil prices are up and down. I know asphalt prices are really high right now. And any budgeting you do for major projects right now, just on diesel fuel alone, if I was a company speccing a project out for this 2023, I'd probably be 30% higher, 40% higher than I would be a year prior. I do believe that this it's a volatile situation right now. There's something has to change. The prices just can't be going up. We're over a huge inflation cost rate at the moment. And usually when it's high inflation, it's not the time to invest in big capital projects. It's better to wait till after, and you'll get more for the money. That's just my 2 bits.
Councillor Kester.
I agree with Scott. Maybe it's not the time to do it, but I don't agree it's the time to take it out of the budget. We can put it in the budget. Tender could go out. Council decides to go for it or not. If the prices are too high, we're right on the heels. High inflation. Some believe a recession's coming. A recession is the time to do it because prices usually go down. And to Tom's thing is taxing and not doing it, money goes into reserve. Traditionally, that's what goes on. But maybe we should be looking at any money that's surplus position automatically goes in the budget for next year as income, I guess, or transfer from reserves. So we're in a neutral, more of a deficit type financing budget where we use all the money up as we get it in instead of putting it in the bank. I think that would be maybe a wise move.
Hi, Joel from administration. If I may, just a couple clarifying items that might help. assist you. One would be if the desire is to carry forward with or move forward with those paving projects, we wouldn't necessarily need to approve the entire package. Scenario 1 does satisfy that. Scenario 3 also does that by just removing the medium level priorities. So those would include the paving projects. I believe we would just have about a $2 million drop in the total budget ask between those two plans. The other thing regarding taxation and kind of reserve levels is something to keep in mind is that every year the capital projects are all funded through either reserves or grants or debt or those type of funding, and taxation is an operational current year item. So they are indirectly related in the sense across time that your tax rates and how you balance those with your operating reserves and those things and how you determine what your tax rate will be. That's an operational item. And then of course, what you determine from operations of what you're flowing through to reserves, that's more of a long-term planning of what we need to do in our capital plan. But in terms of what we would be withdrawing from the 2023 capital budget, they're all funded directly through reserves. So there's only an indirect relationship, if that makes sense.
So to Councillor Eichert's point, you could approve capital funding and transfer less into reserves or transfer more out of reserves for those capital projects and not necessarily increase like the mill rate for this current, like in the spring when we set our tax rate bylaw. But we just would have to be mindful of reserves and the impact on that long term, and maybe do some modeling based on, like I think there is an opportunity to do some modeling based on even some of the projects that are coming on or coming in to be accessible. We just got notice, I think, yesterday that the wind farm, Wheatland Wind Farm is now fully or operational. I don't know if it's fully operational, but some of that will impact our total assessment. That won't impact for this budget that we're looking at, but for the following one, and administration has walked through a couple of the ones that are coming on stream that will be accessible for that with regard to this budget. But it doesn't necessarily translate to that, like you said, direct necessity for increased taxation for this budget. Councillor Bigger and then Councillor Laprise.
And I'm kind of with you on that. If we did the full budget, considering the granting that might come in and taking out of reserves, I'm okay with that too. I think our reserves, now you've got unrestricted reserves at pretty much 35 million, and I'm okay with using some of that.
I was going to say the same thing, basically, that, yeah, the capital budget assumes that all of it is funded from reserves, but in fact, we likely will get grants for some things. So yeah, I just think that we do have the reserves there, and we do have, you know, new companies coming in that eventually down the road can put back into reserves. So we could draw them down a little bit now, I think. Still be okay.
Any other questions? Yep.
Just a comment to go back to the safety issue. We all need to understand that the county is an employer, and under because of that, they're governed by the Occupational Health and Safety Act regulation and code. If you've identified some near misses, I understand there has been, I'm assuming they're documented somewhere, and you've come up with a plan to address that concern, and you've already got it permitted from whoever it was you got the permit from, and heaven forbid something happens the next time a county truck crosses there, or we refuse this, and then something happens the next time a county truck crosses right after we refuse it, that's not going to be a happy day.
I guess I just want to verify or say that I too do not want to raise mill rates. So yeah, just so it's on the books.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion on the information as it's been presented? I've just been trying to pull up my more fulsome capital budget, and I haven't done it. Is the breakdown of the 243 project in there, does it delineate between the paving and the addressing the intersection concern? You might have already presented this to us, and I apologize if you have. And if it's not, and you don't need to answer today, but if you could perhaps provide that to council.
Yeah, through the chair, it doesn't break those into individual projects because there's a cost savings associated to doing them together. So each one on its own would be slightly higher, and I do have those numbers. I haven't provided them in this package.
Perfect. Thank you. If you maybe just could provide those to council, as well as the efficiency in doing, like what the increased cost to break them out separately would be. That'd be great.
I should be able to have that back yet before the end of the day.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I think there's been really good discussion and good consideration of the different factors. Does anybody have any further questions? Does administration need more detailed direction on what we might want brought back for consideration at our next council meeting?
Matt from administration, through the reeve to council, I think it would be advantageous to kind of get a sense of where council is at with respect to these scenarios. They're broad in nature. They do include, those critical and high priority capital projects, but I think it would be beneficial because administration can then go back, put together a package for that interim approval at the next council meeting so that it's cleaner. In the interim between now and obviously the next council meeting, administration can certainly provide that detailed kind of package for council to peruse and look over. Should there be any questions from council to administration in the interim, feel free. I think that would be good in order to get that ironed out. But that will provide for a cleaner budget process to continue it and to capstone for the interim budget approval prior to Christmas break. So just kind of getting a sense of where council is at right now would be definitely beneficial and advantageous for the group as a whole.
So I'll just test. I'm hearing some support for including the full budget items. And just to clarify, Councillor Custer, you were looking at including the medium priority budget items as well. So for looking at the scenarios that were presented, I heard support from you for, I believe it was for scenario 1, approving all projects. Okay. Councillor Lawerson.
I would go with scenario 1 as my first choice, scenario 2 is my second choice.
Okay. And then I heard some support from Deputy Reeve Clausen and Councillor Eichert around scenario 4. And then Councillors Biggers and Bigger and Laprise. If you want to just clarify which scenario you might like to see.
I guess I'm under 1 also, but with no raise in the mill rate.
Right. We would agree with that.
Okay. I'd say that's where I'm leaning as well.
Okay. I'm wondering, because we've narrowed it down to sort of the 2 options, if administration might be able to bring those both back. And if you could bring some modeling with, in the extremely unlikely situation that we would complete all projects, what the impact to reserves at the end of that fiscal would look like with holding the mill rate. I know we don't have it's a bit challenging because we don't have the final assessment. So that would need to be estimated, or perhaps we could use current assessment, something like that. Or if Manager Clem has a estimate of what assessment might look like. Does that satisfy? Would that be enough information for everybody? Councillor Custer?
We keep talking about the mill rate, and I always talk income, because the assessment changes every year, be it growth, be it market fluctuations. The mill rate's easier to report on, but the overall budget doesn't make the headlines. What will be the difference and I know you have to wait till February, but if we keep the mill rates the same, what kind of a growth did we anticipate? Is there any sort of, does our assessment department have a crystal ball they can forecast any growth, or has there been any change in assessments?
It's, Madam Reeve and Council, it's difficult to say. Council's aware of the projects, the renewable energy projects that are coming on board over the next 12, 24 months. Council's also aware of some of those larger projects and the impacts from a high level. To say there's a crystal ball, it's difficult to kind of extrapolate from assessment. You know, we do monitor from that development and assessment perspective. We do monitor those large projects with a ballpark in terms of revenue generation, but that's difficult to make the budget decisions on because that is a forecast, and it could be, you know, getting into that dangerous territory in terms of relying on those forecasts from any of that revenue generation from development in the future. I wouldn't advise on it. Administration wouldn't advise on that, but yeah, it's difficult to, I mean, the February date is.
Be patient.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just want
We're
to.
provided with a couple of projects that will be accessible.
Yeah.
I don't recall, and I just don't have it at my fingertips, the impact based on current mill rates that was estimated in terms of revenue. Page 128, preliminary review of market analysis affecting residential class of assessment indicates that an increase is warranted to reflect the market value change from July 1, 2021, but it doesn't have an amount. So, but that gives me some encouragement that we're not likely seeing a decrease from that residential assessment. And then from the other more regulated, we will need to wait, but we do have a sense. Does administration need further direction in terms of what to bring back for council consideration at the next meeting? Do you need more detail?
I believe that's good through the Reeve to council. I believe we can provide a package with the two scenarios and what they would look like in terms of the reserve drawdown based on that, kind of all in one all-encompassing report. That should be certainly doable.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, which are the ones we're gonna
So I had heard support for 1 and 4. So essentially 1 was all of the capital projects that were presented by administration, and 4 included the critical, high, and all of the carry forward projects with the 2 paving projects deferred. And then I guess just one caveat, there may be, it sounded like there could be potential interest in also seeing that scenario 4, potentially with the intersection integrated into that, but with the paving deferred, depending on, obviously we'll have to consider the efficiency that we're losing by breaking it out. But I did hear interest in hearing that as well. And I think if we're just mindful too, like obviously by approving this, there, like whatever we approve, administration starts actioning, but we do finalize things again in the spring, and at times there is more information on certain projects or that type of thing that we can take into consideration when approving final budgets. So, any other questions or discussion on that?
One just final note to council from administration. Obviously, when taking into account your budget, it's important to weigh that against your council's strategic plan and the different strategies that you've laid out, which actually speak to this debate right now. Just administration's advice in terms of making that decision.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? I guess just a note too, if after reviewing the discussion and the conversation that we've had today, if you have any other clarification or questions, if we could try and provide those to administration prior to like the issuing of the council package. So maybe about a week before our next council meeting, that would assist administration. And if you have questions even after that deadline, if you're able to bring them to administration prior to the council meeting so they can be prepared to present at the council meeting. And then that will just help facilitate, if possible, making that approval during our regularly scheduled council meeting. Just in case there is further information required, it gives administration an opportunity to have that ready for us. If there's no other questions, we could have a motion to accept the unapproved update as information. Councillor Kester, any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you for all your work on this. We appreciate it. Can move to 3.5 or 3.1. My report is on page 70. Sorry, I'm just getting there. Just a couple of things to note. I'm grateful for the collaboration with the Gleason and District Community Association meeting, as well the Gleason Lions Club has stepped forward to volunteer and assist with the holiday train. Just a reminder to everybody that that's happening on Wednesday night. If anybody would like to join us for the concert, and we'll have food trucks and horse-drawn wagon rides and lots of fun on Wednesday. And we are still looking for volunteers as well if anybody wants to assist. We'll have some fire pits that we can just help keep stocked with wood and making hot chocolate and things like that. So please let me know if you're planning to be there and if you would like to volunteer.
This Wednesday?
Yeah. I'll circulate the posters on the website, like on the county website, but we can circulate it as well. We had a good Wheatland Regional Corporation Board meeting. The board did pass a motion to accept the $15,000 contribution to do the operating and governance review to help identify efficiencies and reduce costs. And as well, there was a motion to, I don't have the wording of the motion, but to basically repay Deputy Reeve Klassen, or Councillor Eckert may speak to it more eloquently than I would, but basically to repay the outstanding loan amount to the county. So I was grateful for that. And I did also just include the Community Futures Network of Alberta report. There's some good outcomes in there that really demonstrate the impact of community futures in Alberta. I will move to accept my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. All in favor? Motion is carried. We also had an addition. I had received correspondence from Mayor Kohlberg with Drumheller regarding a request to add our support for a letter to Minister Copping regarding the Centre for Excellence in Rural Healthcare Delivery and Service and the Drumheller Hospital. So I was hoping that council would support including Wheatland County and approving my signature. Deputy CAO Boscariel, I think you said you had a motion. I'm just looking.
Would you like me to read it out for consideration?
Ah, yes, I just pulled it up actually. Sorry, my apologies. If council were to consider that council support the town of Drumheller's letter to Alberta Health Services advocating for support in considering Drumheller to be a centre for excellence in rural healthcare service and delivery by authorizing the Reeve to sign the letter and send back a copy to Mayor Heather Kohlberg. So I don't know, council's wishes if you, I can make the motion. Any questions or discussion? Councillor Kester.
You beat me to it. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity the Drumheller Hospital has been there's been a lot of people from Wheatland County use it on even the other side of the traditional 21, as you so call it. It supports the whole county. I know we have a hospital in Strathmore, but the one in Drumheller has always done, since they built it, surgeries, and it's been like a real hospital, where Strathmore, they took that capacity away from them. So to have that and level it up a par, a notch, is just great news for the whole region for sure. So I strongly support sending a letter.
I would agree with Councillor Kester.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. We will move to 3.2, Deputy Reeves' report.
Thank you. My report's on page 89 of the council package. You already touched on WRC. I will also added an addition to the agenda for Southern Alberta Energy from Waste. There was two things circulated. One is a briefing update, and another is we were asking for a letter of support for more funding from the Alberta Community Partnership Funding Program. Anything that we do at SAWA, basically, moving forward, we always need funds to move forward. We have to utilize engineering firm HDR to help us with moving forward with the chosen vendor, which we can't really tell you who it is yet because it's very complicated. We're dealing with large scale companies, international companies, so we have to be very, very careful how we approach things. We do not want to end up in a litigation if we don't do things fairly. And being that most of us are municipal councillors and or related members of the field, it's you have to be careful what you do. So this funding will help us move forward with the next steps, which is identified by HDR to the board. And yeah, so I will make one motion to approve my report as presented.
Any questions or discussion on Deputy Reeve Clausen's report? All in favor? Motion is carried.
And I have another motion that council authorize the Reeve to sign the proposed letter of support to Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association for its application submission to Alberta Community Partnership IC Fund to allow SAWA to complete the memorandum of understanding process to move forward with a preferred vendor in partnership to develop the 300,000 ton energy from waste facility.
Any questions or discussion on the motion to sign the letter of support?
So with this asking for extra funding and stuff, how do we make an informed decision on how this money is being used, if it's being used properly, and much the same as questions have been asked of other boards that we sit on? Because there are policies and stuff that go along with this? Is there a formula that you use to decide who needs to pay what? I'm just curious.
Yeah, good question. Absolutely. How do I word this? So SAWA is funded by membership. Whoever's there pays per capita, which basically pays for the operating. We have one staff member and board expenses. That's pretty much what that pays for. Any of the things that we move forward where we need private help. So HDR, which would be our engineering, is paid for through grants. I think we've got a history of, there's been several grants applied for successfully, and of course there's always follow-up with the grant. We can't use the money willy-nilly. It has to be proven to what we've done. So there's a report that goes to them, and then there's follow-up after. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. If we go with this letter of support, does that mean SAWA can go to, for example, the village of Hazar or Rockyford or wherever and say, hey, we're upping your rate to belong to SAWA?
Okay, so the rate was discussed at the board recently, and it will be going up. I believe it's about in the neighborhood of 20 cents per capita, but it's under, it's at 80 right now, 80 cents per capita. But that's going to be coming up. So that is not particular to any, that's across the board. So whoever's at the table at the time and wants to move on with the next year will pay that.
Right. So this letter of support is not in any way saying we support raising the levies to the member or?
No, this is strictly to see the project move forward in pertaining to the three vendors that investor submissions.
Right, but there'll be a cost associated with moving forward, won't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a whole process. We have from HDR, we have steps forward that the executive has looked at, and we have to, of course, go back to the board, but there's substantial money to move forward with these partners.
That you already have or that you're going to apply for? You do not have?
Apply for. There'll be more grants asked for.
Asked for, not more levies then?
No.
Okay.
So for clarification, the letter of support is strictly regarding, it's a letter of support for the application for the ACP grant.
That's correct.
And then accountability for that would be through the ACP review process when they are looking at allocating funds through that grant program, and then follow up that you would be responsible for to demonstrate how you've utilized those funds to the province. Any other questions or discussion? Good conversation. All in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that to us. We will move to 3.3, Division 1 Councillor Report.
My report is on page 90 in the package. And I think the one highlight I want to say is I got elected as the chair of the WFCSS board this month. So I'm excited to learn a lot more about the organization. It's, yeah, I'm excited. So that's good. And Donna is continuing on as vice chair. So I'll have wonderful mentorship. So I'll move my report as presented. If anybody has any questions?
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.43. Councillor Bigger.
Yes, I was a little late getting my report in. My apologies. It's on paper. The conference that we had for WFCSS up in Edmonton was very, very good. We, as our WFCSS is actually applying, we cannot support transportation or food, no, transportation and direct food. Yeah. So we've, so the CAO has applied for a grant to cover some expenses of transportation, extra, the deliveries are beginning to be a problem. So she's applied for a grant, and we're getting through the final steps of that grant. So we're hoping to get that through. And then some of it will be supplying food to residents in their home, like cooking in their home. So we're hoping that goes through. Wheatland Housing, we're still going through talks with Derek Wise. And yeah, that's about it. I'll move my report as presented and try not to be late next time.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.5.
My report is on the server. I think everything basically has been covered. The only thing I want to maybe bring up, and I don't know, is in regards to nurse practitioners, which is basically the first I heard of it was at RMA. And I'm just wondering if there's something that we should be following up with. And I apologize, it's there's some chaos in the Eichert residence. So So I haven't had a chance to follow up. I received an email from the association, but I did not get a chance to follow up on that. So it seems to me that this would be a practical way for people to be able to access more health care. But all I've got to go off is what I was told. Now, and when you make a presentation, you have a tendency to extol the virtues as opposed to what might be the drawbacks on that. So I don't know what where we're at on that, and if we should be looking at if engaging with nursing practitioners to help augment people not being able to get doctors and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But I
that's
don't
a
have
good
anything
question.
positive.
On page 216 in Minister Copping's letter, he did reference that they have approved a part-time nurse practitioner in Strathmore to assist with providing medical care to this area. I really quickly just checked and I do not see an active resolution from RMA regarding nurse practitioners, but that's certainly been like an advocacy piece, is that may be like one element or one part of the strategy to improve healthcare access, especially in rural Alberta. In terms of advocacy, we could contemplate something like a resolution to go to spring convention to see if there's an appetite among colleagues to advocate for that at the provincial level. I know it's certainly something that the province is heavily considering and integrating into their strategies for sure.
So having said that, I will look into that further.
Okay.
And other than that, I'll move my report.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? And thanks for bringing that to our attention, and just update us on what you find out, and if there's further action that you would like council to consider, just please bring that forward. We'll move to 3.6.
Yeah, my report didn't make it to the server. The first I attended the council meeting, and the 6th to 10th was RMA up at Edmonton. 15th was MPC and the committee of the whole meeting afterwards. 22nd was council. All these things have been previously documented. It's nice to be at the end. On the 28th, I attended the Rosebud Seed Plant AGM, and they're in very healthy condition. They do that every year. The only comment I would have maybe is since I only go to one once a year, on the new timesheet, it only has the Czar and Strathmore seed plants. If we could add a little button for Rosebud. I added this one under Hazard, just so you know. Okay. If there's no questions, even if there is questions, I'll move my report.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.7.
I had it here a minute ago. Oh, there we go. So mine's a little, it's missing a couple of things, and thanks Shanna, because I forgot to put the November 1st council meeting. Right after that council meeting, I got sick, and as you know, because I wasn't at the RMA, and that just knocked the stuffing out of me. I was not normal until the 1st of December. You'd get better, and then you just wham, and it hit you again. And I've talked to, I know Spencer Hilton had the same thing. He ended up with laryngitis. At least I didn't get that. But anyway, it's a little bit brief. And then November 14th, it was one of the days I was feeling good, and so was the 15th. So we had those meetings, committee of the whole, and then the 17th. And then, as you know, on the 22nd, I dialed in, but I kind of fell off pretty quick. So that's, it's a pretty slim report, but I'm feeling much better now, so that's good. The only other thing I will add is, and that's why I was a little distracted because I wanted to bring up the original request. So we got a request from the Dallam Community Association just to get a letter of support for their current playground project. They've currently on their own raised $80,000 in donations from the community and local businesses and Wheatland County. So she's just asking, she's going to apply for a CFEP matching grant, which I have no idea what that is. Maybe Matt does. I don't know. Anyway, whatever that is, through the Alberta government. And so they're basically just asking for a letter of support that says, we support the community things. I reached out to Matt and he had someone, I'm assuming, draft this up. It's very well written. So I'd like to include that as part of my report, and then I'll have two motions, one to approve my report and one to approve that the Reeves sign the letter of support. Any questions? Oh, and I forgot one other thing too. Town hall meetings. November 2nd, I postponed because we had that terrible blizzard, and I couldn't have lived with myself if somebody would have come and gotten in an accident, and besides that, nobody would have come, or well, it would have been silly to go that day. We did have one on the 3rd in Dallam. Matt was with. There was a few people there, but the weather still kept, like the roads were not great where they met. So it kept a bunch of people away, but I would call it overall a successful meeting. There was a few things brought up, and I'm going to get with Matt later and see if we can draft up just a little, a briefing note? Yeah, postmortem. Yeah, in a briefing note, but we'll keep it less than 34 pages. So we'll do that. That's the other thing I forgot. So any other questions? If not, I'll move my report be accepted as presented.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
And then I would like to move that council direct the Reeve to sign this letter of support for the Dallam Hall and Playground Committee CFEP grant application.
Any questions or discussion regarding the letter of support? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for bringing that forward.
Reeve Link, I just wanted to point out that I just looked on the RMA website and there is a resolution for government funding for nurse practititioners.
Yeah, what year is that one?
22.
Oh, is it 22? I thought we had one, but.
Probably hour 3 of the resolution package.
Right, exactly. There was a long list of resolutions that day, so it's 17-22F.
Oh, perfect. You know what? I read it backwards. I read 17.
Oh, being year 17.
Yes.
Yeah, 2017.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Everybody can find that under the resolution database. Thank you very much, Councilor Laprise. I actually had in my head that we did one, and that's why I was.
Yeah, I did. Well, I knew
Thank
there was
you.
something, but
Thank you. I appreciate that. We will move to 4.1.
Good morning, Reeve Lincoln Council. On page 99 of the agenda package is the Chief Administrative Officer monthly report for November 2022. Included is 2 resolutions for acceptance of the report. The second resolution refers to the resolution tracker that you'll see as a supplemental attachment to the package. Some salient points with respect to the CAO, just conducting those regular meetings, ensuring that the final financial budget will be approved in the interim, moving up into December at the last council meeting of the year. People Services recruitment for multiple positions is currently underway, and you'll see other supplemental items there. We're available for any questions, should you have any. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the CAO report?
I just wanted to say that I really liked the e-newsletter that went out, and yeah, looking forward to people being able to sign up for it. That might be another easy way to access the information that we're providing, but I really thought it looked awesome. Very colorful and informative, lots of great information in there, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. Thank you. And thank you to administration for actioning that so quickly. That's phenomenal. Any other questions or discussion? Motion to accept the report as information. Councillor Kester, all in favor? Motion is carried. A second motion to accept the council resolution tracker as information.
Also,
Councillor Larson. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Oh,
Sorry. Oh, no.
I had a quick question.
Yes, of course.
About the interest in the Eagle Lake Campground. Do we know, did we get some good response on that? I'm curious. I know you're going to review, but.
Yes, through the Reeve to Councillor Laprise, I couldn't answer that. I'm not sure the uptake on that, but we certainly can get that information today for council.
I was just curious. It's fine. Okay, get the analysis later. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.12.
Council, Matt from administration again. On page 107 of the agenda package, you'll note the Marigold Library System amendment to an agreement. Included in the supplemental documentation is that amendment. You'll note that a note was sent from Marigold, Chief Executive Officer, to administration with respect to asking for the approval of a small but critical update to the agreement. It's basically a housekeeping item. So you'll note the modification there. I could turn it over to Reeve Link should you have any additional supplemental information, but the resolution is available for your consideration. Thank you.
Council's wishes. Councillor Larson.
I'll move the council authorize the amendments to the Marigold agreement, ensuring some amendment clarifying the physical ownership of materials provision and authorize the Reeve to sign and that.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.13, ratify attendance at the 2022 FCS SAA conference.
Matt from administration again, you'll see the recommendation from administration on page 125 of your agenda package with respect to the FCSSAA conference and Councillor Bigger and Councillor Laprise's attendance. Thank you.
I'll move to ratify 3 days per diem and mileage for Councillor Laprise and Councillor Bigger's attendance to 2022 FCSSAA conference in Edmonton.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.21.
Good morning, Council. Corey from administration. Page 128 of the council package is the report to council for corporate and financial services. Just a couple of key highlights here. One thing is during November, the actual first bill went out for the new utility rates. And so that is circulating. I haven't had any reports back on any complaints during that over the last month, unless others have received that, but I personally haven't. And in IT services, we are, as you can see, Council Chambers is almost there. We're working out a few more kinks and appreciate everyone's patience and understanding on that one. Also, we have some good news in regards to asset management. So we've put in all of our submissions towards the asset management grant. It's a $50,000 grant, and we're just awaiting for them to review our submission and hopefully approve our grant and get that funding. We're not 100% sure if we're going to get it this year, just due to their timelines. Worst case scenario, we get it next year, or I guess worst case scenario, we don't get it. But if we don't get it this year, it would be next year. So. And that concludes my report. I'm here for any questions you might have.
Any questions regarding the report? Councillor Kester.
Yes. On the monthly bills, utility rates, it's my understanding, I don't get one, but we charge a fee for cube of water used plus a flat fee. And we're trying to get to cost neutral. Has there been any calculations on what the average ratepayer is paying for water per cube when you take into account the flat fee?
Yeah, I'd have to look back at the average rates across the board. I do believe that when we did this, it was specific depending on which location it was. There are some specifics around that, despite that, the 15%.
Okay. So
Hopefully that answers.
let's make it a little easier. Could we have a study on the flat rate collected in Rosebud divided by the amount of water that was actually used? And that'll give me a fee that Rosebud paid per cube contributed through the flat fee. I can add that to the fee they're paying per cube, and I'll know how much what they're paying for their water. What the difference is for the actual charge we are paying for the water. Right?
Yeah.
Because I believe that charge is just strictly a flat, just the fee for per cube. There is no flat fees anymore. There used to be, but not anymore.
Yeah, through the Reeve, I think we can put something like that together.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll move your your report.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 4.22.
Morning again, Joel from administration, here to review the reserve bids for the upcoming December 8th property tax auction. In summary, essentially every year, as long as there is properties in arrears, which would be 3 years of unpaid taxes, the MGA requires us to take those properties to tax auction. And then part of the MGA requirement as well is for each of the roles, council is required to set a reserve bid or a minimum bid that must be met in order to actually enact the sale of those properties. It has to be at an assessed market value, which our assessor has reached out and gotten some independent appraisals on these, and that's what these values represent on these properties as well. And so essentially this report is just requesting council to approve those values. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
I just have a question first, because my memory doesn't let me do this, but we had a number of these last year that went to auction and I believe none of them sold. Are these the same properties?
So through the Reeve, my understanding from the MGA is these particular properties are not the same.
Okay.
And that once a property has gone to auction and does not sell, it effectively just remains as in their title unless the municipality chooses to take title of that property. So if we were to choose to take title from the ones, for example, that were last year that were unsold, we would need to choose to take title and then sell those as the holders of the property. They cannot go back to auction.
Okay, that was my question.
Essentially, that's
so
what
it's
you're getting
either get rid of them this time or we're on the hook.
Effectively.
Yeah, thanks.
Could I ask another question? I'm curious how a person in the county would know what roll number 2770179 is. How do you search this to know where it is?
Through the Reeve, I believe, and Matt might provide some clarity, but on our mapping systems online, I believe they could look up the roll number and it would provide them
Okay.
exact geographic areas, which I think there's satellite views on that too that they could provide.
And exactly, Manager of Finance is correct, the MuniSite program. And then, of course, there is a presentation that Planning and Development prepares as well for this. So, yeah.
I think we were going to do a little MuniSite 101 for some of us who don't know it. So thank you, though. That helps me. Yep. It's there.
Any other questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council set a reserve bid and conditions for the properties to be offered for sale at the December 8, 2022 property tax auction as listed in the package.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 4.31.
Good morning, Reeve Council. Matt from administration here to present the November 2022 Community and Development Services update for your information. You'll note a few things. Reeve Link spoke to the CP holiday train preparations. Administration is working closely with community groups, etc., to prepare for that festival on Wednesday taking place. So big kudos to administration for doing that work as well. You'll also note the Rosebud Volunteer Cemetery columbarium concrete pad was poured. There's photos on page 136 for your information. With respect to economic development on page 137, work on developing that hydrogen industry continues. We're hoping that the hydrogen plan will be presented at the final council meeting of the year. So economic development is preparing that hydrogen strategy as one of the deliverables in accordance with the agreement that we signed with our hydrogen specialists. So we're getting that work well underway with respect to that. Fire and emergency services. I just want to direct council's attention to the top of page 138 of your agenda package. You'll note the fire services agreements, the status of those agreements that we decided to put into this update because there is a resolution outstanding on the resolution tracker with respect to this. So our fire chief and his team are underway in terms of getting those agreements drafted in accordance with the authority that the fire chief has in signing those 8 agreements. Once all of that is completed, the fire chief does intend to come back and just provide council an update with respect to that work that is currently underway. Statistics are included as well. Planning and development, you'll see the statistics and actuals year to date on page 139 to 140 of your agenda package. One of the exciting notes that administration wants to let council know is that we will have that municipal development plan, hopefully at the last council meeting of the year for presentation in a nice format for council's approval for that reading. So looking forward to getting that wrapped up at the end of the year. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the report? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the November 2022 Community and Development Services Report as information.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 4.32.
Good morning, council. Matt from administration. On page 145 of the agenda package is the Alberta Community Partnership Grant. We've spoken about this a bit today with respect to support. Recently, the town of Strathmore administration reached out to Wheatland County administration to apply to the Alberta Community Partnership Program, known as ACP, in order to obtain a grant specific to funding the intermunicipal development plan project that will have to occur. As council's aware and will recall, effective March 31st, the CMRB membership for both the town and the county was dissolved from a ministerial order. That being said, we do have to undertake the intermunicipal development plan work. So this grant will help offset some funding with respect to that extensive work that will have to take place. I'm available for any questions and hopefully I can answer them. Thank you very much.
Just a question, all the other ones we did, do we have any grant funding for those? When we did all these with our other municipalities.
Other IDPs.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Through the Reeve, no, we did not get grant funding. From a planning and development perspective, administration does foresee an IDP, especially with a larger urban in the surrounding rural fabric. There will be some complexities, additional considerations for administration and council with respect to that IMC committee to consider. So there might be a little bit of a lengthier back and forth kind of work that needs to take place for this intermunicipal development plan.
Thanks. I'd feel more comfortable applying for this after we had a meeting and had scope of how we're going to move forward laid out, but that's just me. Because I think if there's funding available, this might have a tendency to creep a lot more than it possibly could.
As applying for grants, I know how they go and how long they take. They do take quite a while. So just keep that in mind.
So can administration clarify whether this is like, is it, this is standard? Like, are there grants, like if Rocky View decides to do their IDP with, well, I guess wouldn't. I was thinking with Airdrie, but because they're all both in the CMRB. But any county doing IDPs with their large urban centers, is going for grants the norm?
Through the Reeve to Councillor Eichert, the grant is available. So the town administration thought it was opportune to take advantage of that. The specific grant I can't comment on in the past if it was available, and the scope and qualifications for it would pertain to an intermunicipal development plan. So I'm not entirely sure. However, it is not unique that municipalities go for money to offset this kind of work, this intermunicipal work, especially when it becomes, and it will be, complex. So that's kind of my answer. So it's not unique that municipalities would go for money to offset this work. With respect to the ACP grant, I can't comment if it was available in the past with respect to the scope of an IDP. So
I believe from my recollection, there are municipalities that have accessed ACP funding for IDPs, and under the Alberta Community Partnership Program guidelines, page 33, there is a stream. Schedule 3 is for mediation and cooperative processes, and it specifically references funding for IDPs. And I believe there are other counties that, and as Deputy CAO Boscario referenced, where there is a large urban that does provide some level of service within a rural municipality where they have accessed those grants to facilitate the mediation and that collaboration for developing an IDP. I don't have a list of which municipalities, but I have heard of other municipalities accessing the grant for that purpose.
I cringe when I hear the word complex.
But I think if we weren't to do this, it could delay our, if they don't have the funding to carry on this process, it could delay the process even further because they don't have the manpower to do it or whatever. So I don't know. To me, I would support it. I'll make the motion that council moves to support the joint Alberta Community Partnership Grant application submission with the Town of Strathmore to assist in the preparation of the Wheatland County Town of Strathmore Intermunicipal Development Plan.
Any questions or discussion? Just a question to administration. With grant funding, were we to be approved for a grant and not require it, you would simply not access the grant and it would go back into the Government of Alberta pool. Do I understand that correctly?
good question. And there is a post-mortem reporting that is required for grants. And that funding would then be appropriated. So you have to put up the required project and the deliverable in order to get that money.
Just a question, is there a lead on this or is it joint? Like we both get all the information, reporting and everything will be joint between the town and the county?
Correct. Madam Reeve, Deputy Reeve Clausen, it is joint. So you'll note that the Town of Strathmore, it's a Wheatland County Town of Strathmore application. So our administration is, they're communicating. And basically this is the resolution that's required in order to kind of get that going. So it is a joint application. And that being said, we'll have to have all the same information and reporting to both respective councils.
Perfect, thank you.
Good discussion and good questions. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.33.
Good morning, Council. Dave from Administration. On page 148 of your agenda package is the Lakes of Muirfield Recreation Site Proposal. This is a kind of a unique situation. We've been working with the Lakes of Muirfield Community Association and the Recreation Committee for probably close to 2 years, 18 months. They they did a community engagement around what kind of recreation they were looking for in the community. And we've kind of been working with them through some of council's direction around the lakes, Muirfield Mercantile site, and how that site was going to kind of play out with subdividing off that Mercantile site, as well as providing some recreational space in that area. Kind of working through that process, the community felt that the site north of that, the cell 8, would be more suitable for the recreation purposes, and then that other site could be, if council desired, 100% commercial kind of thing. So they were proposing that site plan, or they would like to propose a site plan for that north section. So as council being the landowner as well as approving authority, as a landowner kind of provide that notice that they were looking to plan that kind of site as a concept, and that redesignation of that site. So this report is basically providing that information to council, kind of the background of how we got to where we are kind of thing, and just providing that information for council. And I'm available for any questions on that.
Questions?
Just to provide some clarification as well, it's for information. There's a process that has to be underway. So Dave Rhines did point out the uniqueness of this, right? So it is how we got here, the proposed concept, but it may change. I mean, the HOA is going to lead that application process, so it's subject to change. This is just where we are today. It's been a long time coming, so and the community through their engagement, the HOA leading that engagement about 1.5 years ago, administration working closely with the Rec Society. It's kind of, the community is proud, as Deputy Reeve Claassen could probably attest to kind of get it to this stage. So the application will be forthcoming. I'm not entirely sure when, but they do intend to apply. So thank you.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work done on this. That originally started with the outdoor rink that was donated to them, and they needed a place to put it. So we looked at this site here. They originally wanted where the Mercantile was, and to basically upgrade all that into a rec area, and including possibly wanting the Mercantile building as well. The last meetings that I attended, they looked at kind of divert them more to Lyalta Community Hall. The HOA has become the full, I believe, I don't know if they've actually done it yet, but they were going to pay membership into the hall for all people within Muirfield as part of their HOA fee. So then all the residents would have a membership in the hall, so that would give them access to it, which I find as a area councilor, I think that's the best for the area, because that generates bodies in the hall, generates new ideas and more usage, which is what the community halls need. This rec site, they want to look at moving the rink over there. They want to look at putting, pickleball, tennis courts, things like that. And then when I look at the rest of the development, we would have to provide some level of area for acres for recreation. All they have in there right now is a tot lot that isn't even on their land. It's on golf course land, I believe, which will probably all likely get moved here. And then in the future, somewhere in the development, there will have to be some kind of playground in there too, I would imagine. So this is community driven. I've tried to stay out of it and let them, go the way they are. It is land that was set aside originally for seniors care, correct? Seniors housing, however that was going to work out at the time, I don't know. It is highway frontage. Could have some issues. There is residents across the way that might have some issues with this, but we'll see. And the mailboxes are over there now too. Sorry.
So just for clarification, the red is cell 7. So that's 5 some acres. And do we own where the hall is? Is it the county land?
No, that's community.
Community land? Okay.
Yeah, the hall is not owned by the county.
And so cell 8, is that where the outdoor rink is now? Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I've got a question. I'm not too sure how to if I directed to the counselor of the area or to administration. But we see this as a growth area. And we are thinking about taking the only commercial, the really good commercial space out of the only place we can actually make real good money at. We're going to take that out and turn it into recreational. Has there been any like ongoing, all the recreation for Muirfield, in my opinion, my humble opinion, should be on the other side where the community center is. And I don't know, in the past, I was fairly familiar with this, in the past, there was land that was available to be bought that the county maybe should be looking at purchasing and getting. I'm not sure what the overall look like, but we've got a community center on one side of the road. Like that road's going to be an issue in the fact that people have to go from point A to point B. But this doesn't help that deal because people still have to go from the community. Like if we were, like, has been given into, if we were to put, let's say some company decides that they want to put a sports recreational facility into that area, would it not make more sense that it goes on the other side? Like, has that ever been thought about? Like, what are we doing 10 years from now? Because that was the discussion when we put that arena where it was put. Like what happens if this area takes off and you've got recreation in a commercial zone? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. We've got a commercial area and we're going to take it out of commercial. Now, if we're going to use that area as part of this omni processing thing, then that's a different kettle of fish, because then you can't build anything on top of that. So having recreational facilities on top of that makes sense. But this is, I think, is getting the cart before the horse. I think we have to figure out a couple other things. Like I think we have to figure out what we're going to do with servicing, which way we're going to go with servicing and all that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, you're a planner. You keep your recreational facilities in an area together, or do you spread them out? Like, I don't know.
In terms of what we're dealing with presently, it's kind of it's concurrently obviously working with the community to see what the needs are after the fact. Master planning aside, because this isn't it. I mean, we're working to kind of get there. Keep in mind, just through the Reeve to council, that obviously this is for information. We anticipate that an application will be forthcoming. So, in terms of those kind of the merits of the development and the bylaw at hand, I would administration would advise council that those comments can be saved for obviously that application. Again, not sure what the site may look like with respect to the application coming forward. It could change, but the intent obviously from the HOA is to move forward with exploring this cell in the direct control district for some recreation activation at this time. In terms of other assets and in terms of the synergies between the hall across the road and with the community as well, administration has definitely considered that. We do, in fact, obviously have a capital project, the long-term project proposed that council has been privy to and considered throughout the budget process with respect to the multi-use pass systems in its hamlets and urban areas. The path that was suggested, notwithstanding the fact that there has to be extensive engagement consultation, is, of course, council saw it, connecting the community hall with the Lakes of Muirfield. So there would potentially be that synergy and that link that council obviously can consider in terms of and in concurrently with the engagement of the community. So there are those pieces that have been considered from administration, considered from the Homeowners Association, and of course with Deputy Reeve Clausen there as well. So those are my comments with respect to that.
Well, okay, now, and I appreciate that. Now, but what happens, like we just had a a very in-depth presentation from water and wastewater. And the company is looking at putting this omni processing thing would sit in that area from what they said. Can a hockey rink sit on top of that? Like, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we getting our cart before the, like, I understand that they need the homeowners association. I really appreciate this work, but I just, like, me voting for this is sort of saying that, yeah, maybe we can change it, but it's sort of saying, I'm saying this is, we got to figure this out. There's a whole bunch of other things that have to be figured out before we do this. And me voting for this sort of says, yeah, I'm okay with this. Well, I'm okay with the homeowners association finding a site for recreation, but I'm not sure that saying that site there, considering what I heard this morning, is something I can even agree with right now.
Madam Reeve, if you may. Oh, yeah,
Administration
for
can
sure.
respond, of course,
Just-
Deputy Reeve Clausen and Councillor Laverson.
Just 2 points to Councillor Eichert's comments through the Reeve. The first point is just accepting this as information. So there's nothing in terms of the spirit of approving anything or endorsing anything. It's accepting as information. So to your level of comfort to that point. Secondly, I was listening very closely with respect to the presentation this morning, and obviously they identified that site as, I think, the steroids or the
Septic on steroids.
Storm, yeah, on steroids. The consultant did note that recreation could be put on such a site, just for that. I think to that point, however, it would be incumbent on administration to really collaborate, to look at what kind of recreation activation will be explored, and that could be through the application process in order to ensure and collaborate with the servicing study that's going underway to ensure that all of those checkboxes are checked off prior to anything. And it would be incumbent on administration to let council know along the way how that looks before anything kind of happens. That's administration's advice.
So, great discussion. Councillor Eichert, I hear what you're saying, and I was looking at the same thing this morning going, will that work? And I think the great response from administration. From the community, we have an excited group of people that want to get going and they want to provide some services for their residents, which is great. It's fantastic. There's some younger members that are driving this. They want to fix the outdoor rink that's there, but they don't want to put any money in there. So they want to know where it's going to go, what we're going to do so we can get some funding and get going. And of course, these are people with kids that are actively using the sites, so they want to get going now. And I admire their enthusiasm, and I've cautioned them that yes, we're looking at all these things as the developer and or council and the approving authority, which makes it even more fun. We do have a requirement that we have to provide some sort of rec area in a residential development that was originally going to be a 50+ area, which isn't now. So we're behind the cart. It's ran away from us. Now we're trying to catch up to it. So yeah, these are all great things. I think we need to look at what was presented to us this morning and find out, is that what council wants to do? Then yes, this might make more sense to have recreation there and what recreation we can have on there. I mean, they're just giving this information right now to get a feedback. I'm sure they're going to watch this and see what we're discussing and know where we're at. And I can't give a definitive answer. Of course, I'm going to support the area for having a rec site. I'm really happy that they're working with the community hall in the area. It has some facilities there that could enhance or whatever as well. But that's as much as I can say.
Okay, I think we do need a little bit more information on here. Just if we look at the original resolution by Councillor Clausen, the process to subdivide is one thing, but the associated cost to service and look at those. So we don't, the cost, if you look down there, the financials are not there. And then once we know that, I guess the other question I would have is this going to be something that is like a joint, like similar to what Dallam's doing, where they have to raise $X, we might put in $X, like, so that it's not wholly funded by the county, because, that's easy to come and say, well, if you build it, we'll come and use it, right?
I just have a comment too. I was a little disappointed to hear that this comment. The ASP has drastically changed since inception of a retirement community, is now a family community, and highly unlikely an independent seniors living facility will ever see the light of day. Look, why not? Housing should be integrated and seniors should be integrated into communities. That struck me as I don't know, maybe I don't want to say short-sighted, but I don't think they should disclude it just because it's a family community. Seniors should be part of the family communities, I think.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So the discussion before about funding, part of this is we are the developer and we've assumed so we've sold lots, we've have money put aside. So some of that money in my mind could be used to help this because we would force a developer to, as council and as a development authority, we would force a developer to put some of this stuff in. So if we have, and they would pay for it from the lot sales. So that's why when we took it over, I asked council and approved to put some money aside for things like this. So it's a little different than our community halls and things like that because we are the developer. I just ask that you keep that in mind. Because we do have control over it, we do generate revenue from it. And in order for good development, you should reinvest your money back into it.
Yeah. And I take your point, and I still am at a loss to explain how a county municipality became a developer, but that horse has left the barn. So
It wasn't by choice.
There's always a choice. But anyway, that's not a discussion to have here.
Any other questions or discussion?
I was going to make a motion. I'd like to let council receive the Lakes of Muirfield Homeowner Association plan as information. And I'm glad to hear that the community is excited about something for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Good conversation, good discussion, and I know we'll get further information coming back. It is exciting that they're having this conversation, and I think good that we're taking into consideration all the factors for appropriate placement of elements for the community and that they're actively involved in determining what that will look like and the vision for the community. So thank you to administration for the work on it. We look forward to getting more information and some direction on this. Any other questions or discussion on the motion to accept as information? All in favor? Motion is carried. Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll resume our agenda at agenda item 4.34.
Good afternoon, Council. Dave from administration. On page 157 of your agenda package is the recreation policy revisions. At the October 11th, 2022 community hall meeting, council reviewed a report on grant programs within the county, and based on the discussions from that meeting, I've amended the recreation policy, and there's the green and red highlighted with the changes, basically a name change for that policy to make it a little clearer, and I can answer any questions around that.
Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approves the Carson Gleason Community Facilities Funding Grant Policy Recreation Policy, Section 14.4 revisions as presented.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.35.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of council, Chris from administration. Just here today to provide the RCMP quarterly reports for Drumheller and Strathmore that have been provided to us by the detachment commanders. These are their Q2 results because their fiscal year starts in April, so therefore they go April to March, so which is why it's Q2 instead of Q3. I'm not sure how much of the information I can, questions I can answer. Of course, this is their information. However, I will be scheduling Staff Sergeant Wilgosh for face-to-face with council in early in the new year.
Any questions regarding the reports? If not, a motion to accept his information.
Also move.
Councillor Laprise has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Move to agenda item 4.41, Transportation and Agriculture Report.
Good morning, Council. Good afternoon, Council. Brad Bullock presenting the November Transportation and Agriculture Report. Starting on page 196 of your agenda. So for capital projects, some of the more salient ones are listed. So construction is complete, was completed mid-November on the Rosebud Waterline Looping Project. There was a walkthrough later that week. There was identified a few deficiencies that will need some cleanup in the spring, but overall that project is done. For bridges, the bridge file 07731, which is on Township 250 between Range Road 215 and 220. That replacement is complete and usable now, with final touches to be done in 2023. The bridge file 07925, which is on Township Road 262 between Range Road 233 and 234, has started. It's anticipated that'll be completed about mid-November. On the utility infrastructure planning side, we have sent out RFPs for detailed engineering on the potential raw water supply line to the Goldfinch ASP. So we did that just ahead of time. If that gets approved through council as part of the budget approvals, we'll review those RFPs and award that project in early 2023. And that's just to clarify, that's just the engineering portion of that project. On the roads, the Highway 17 and 24 construction, as council is aware, the contractor was only able to complete the base lift on that one, and they'll come back in the spring to do that. In the meantime, they have put some center line and stuff to try and improve the safety of that road until they can resume work in the spring. Also, for bridge maintenance, the county has contracted repair work on about 15 bridges through the county, and that work is also anticipated to be completed by mid-December. The annual Carsland Lagoon discharge was completed October 25th. The test results for that are back, and all of the discharge samples were within acceptable limits to regulation, including the unionized ammonia, which is an important one to fish habitat, was well below the federal limits. Public Works washrooms renovations has been completed. In the hamlets, as with most of the county, a lot of effort and attention has been put into snow plowing on the roads and within the hamlets. So the crews have been doing a good job on that. One of the things that they find that is challenging there is all the drifting that they get as well after the snowfall events. So the crews in the greater beats, they're doing their best to stay on top of those flows and those the snow drifting. If anybody does notice any areas that need to be attended to, we always encourage people to call in and let us know, because they don't always know necessarily what's going on, but they do tour the greater beats, and when they do notice them, they'll clear them. But it's always helpful to get a heads up on some areas. Under the land for Muirfield lot sales, there is a table there for council to view. So this is one that we've had in the report ongoing. As you can see, most of the lots are sold. There's a few that are still pending sale, and there's still two lots that are unsold. On page 200 of the report is the agriculture and environment report. I won't worry about reading through all of these, but you can see there's the mowing program. So this was reported on last month as well, that 9 out of the 10 divisions received 2 cuts. The last division, we did get snow prior to being able to get there. However, our agriculture environment foreman did know that the grass was short enough there that it probably didn't require a recut. And so it was a good year because it was a long season that we had for cutting. We have the 15-foot mowers seem to be performing quite well. And the plan is to continue with that program moving forward. Past that, there's some notes, weed and pest control, programs and events that are ongoing, as well as some upcoming events and some other activities listed. And I'm here for any questions.
Any questions regarding the report? If not, a motion to accept for information.
There. I'll move that council accept the General Manager of Transportation and Agriculture November 2022 report as information.
Thank you. Councillor Larson has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 5.1, correspondence and information items. We had 2 pieces of correspondence, one from the Mayor of Ponoka and one from AHS in response to our letter. I don't think any action is required. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accept the following items as information as provided in the package.
Thank you. Councillor Laprise has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 6. I'll move us into closed session. All in favor? Motion is carried. Council has moved out of closed session and there are motions arising. A motion regarding disclosure harmful to economic and other interests of a public body, resale of county lands.
I'll move that council direct, is the right one, I think. Administration to continue with the process of subdividing the existing building. Am I on the right one?
Yep.
And
Here, do you want it?
building site,
Oh, you've got it.
roll number 9455030, Murfield Mercantile. And if successful, list the sale of the Mercantile building and its associated subdivided land parcel at the suggested list price as presented in the report to council dated December 6, 2022.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move that council direct administration to procure a realtor and have properties of roll number 7679000 and roll number 2770141 listed for sale at the suggested listed price provided to the report or in the report to council.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. A motion arising regarding Councillor Code of Conduct.
The council direct administration to hire an independent investigation team in accordance with bylaw 2022-05, section 14.5, to follow the procedure set out in bylaw 2022-05 for the official complaints filed against Councillor Eichert.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is, opposed? Motion is carried. Motion arising regarding FOIP section 27, privileged information, village demand letter response.
Oh, my phone. Sorry, I'm just looking back here.
I'll make the motion that council direct administration to authorize county legal counsel to respond to the response letter dated December 2nd, 2022 with the recommended actions and report back to council accordingly.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. Meeting is adjourned.